What if the very streets you walk today have whispered secrets of blood and betrayal, where civilization danced on the edge of a dagger's tip? Cities once pulsing with life now lie shrouded in shadows of their violent legacies, blood-soaked stones and forgotten horrors that still curl in the corners of history's mind. Rome, Athens, Nineveh, these weren't just places on a map, they were cauldrons of chaos, teeming with the kind of danger that makes today's crime rates look like child's play. Think you've got a handle on the past? Think again. Every corner turned in these ancient metropolises could lead you to a gladiator's roar or a merchant's betrayal. Imagine stumbling upon a marketplace where deals were sealed with blood, where the scent of spices mixed with the tang of iron and the heartbeat of an empire thrummed beneath your feet. There's a reason they say history is written by the victors, because the losers? They don't get a chapter, they become footnotes in someone else's bloody tale. Picture this, a bustling street in Pompeii, the air fragrant with life, until it wasn't. Until the sky turned black with ash, swallowing the screams of a city caught off guard. Or consider Carthage, where the sun blazed overhead while dark plots boiled beneath. Skeletons of ancient conspirators whisper still, plotting their resurgence in the dark alleys of our consciousness. How many lives were lost for the sake of power, for greed, for revenge? The answer is insatiable, like a relentless tide crashing against the shores of time. What if I told you that these cities were more than mere locations? They were characters in a grand, twisted saga, each with their own hidden agendas, corrupt politicians, and bloodthirsty rulers. Imagine Caligula, not as a name in a textbook, but as a shadow stalking the marble halls, plotting your demise with a smile. Or the whispers of a Socrates, his wisdom echoing through the streets of Athens even as the dagger glinted in the hands of a traitor. You want humor? Picture a gladiator, puffing up for the crowd, only to trip over his own sword, landing face first in the sand. The audience roars with laughter, until the next man steps up, and suddenly, it's not just a joke. Life and death entwined like a cruel game, where the stakes are nothing less than your own heart's blood. These cities didn't just house the finest minds and greatest warriors, they were battlegrounds for the souls of men, where fate twisted like a noose, squeezing tighter with every heartbeat. The air crackled with tension, rife with the allure of power and the stench of betrayal. They are relics of humanity's darkest ambitions and brightest dreams, lying in wait, ready to ensnare the next curious soul who dares to walk their haunted paths. So, what are you prepared to unearth? Will you tremble before the ghosts of ancient ambition, or will you laugh in the face of history's dark humor? The choice is yours, but beware, once you enter this world of chaos, there's no turning back. The air crackled with tension, sharp and metallic, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting Uruk in a cloak of bronze and shadow. I stood at the edge of a crumbling wall, the stones cold beneath my fingers, the weight of history pressing down on me like a suffocating shroud. I remember the whispers of the evening breeze, secrets carried from the past, brushing against my cheek, urging me to listen closely. The city was alive, but not in the way you'd hope. No, this was the heartbeat of a battleground, a throbbing pulse of fear and desperation. Across the way, I spotted her, Zara, my sister, her silhouette darting through the streets with the grace of a gazelle, but the urgency of a cornered fox. The shadows clung to her like a second skin, a ghost haunting the ruins of our childhood. I could see the determination etched in her brows, the fire in her eyes that ignited memories of laughter and dreams lost to this cruel war. She was searching for him, her husband, Rummy, a soldier caught in the hellfire of a siege, a man too brave for his own good. I remember the last time I saw Rummy, standing before me, his armor shining under the relentless sun, a smile that could chase away the darkest of storms. I'll return before the harvest, he had promised, and I cherished that promise like a sacred prayer. But now, that promise lay shattered somewhere in the dust, another casualty of this endless conflict consuming Uruk and you're like a ravenous beast. Zara! I called, my voice raw with desperation, but the sounds of chaos drowned me out, the clashing of metal, the cries of the wounded, and the mournful wail of mothers searching for their children, resonating through the night like a haunting lullaby. Time twisted around us, each moment stretching into eternity as I watched her disappear into the gloom, my heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. The walls of yore, once proud and unyielding, now felt like a prison. I could sense the fear rippling through the streets, a palpable dread that curled around my insides like a serpent. My legs felt heavy, as if the weight of the city rested on my shoulders, the ghosts of its glorious past whispering reminders of what we had lost. I remember the gardens that once bloomed with life, the markets bustling with laughter and chatter, and now, it was reduced to a silent tableau of despair. I stumbled through the debris, my heart racing, driven by an instinct to find her. Shadows danced around me, dark and foreboding, as the remnants of once vibrant life crumbled beneath my feet. I wished for the laughter of children, the sweet aroma of fresh bread, but all that remained was the acrid stench of smoke and blood. My mind flickered to Rummy. Would he still wear that same brave smile when the sun rose again? Or had he become another ghost, wandering through the ruins of a city that had devoured him whole? And then I saw him. Rummy, or what was left of him. He lay crumpled in a heap, blood seeping into the earth, staining the ground forever. I staggered back, my breath hitching in my throat. The world narrowed down to a single point, the horror of that moment, the vulnerability of the human spirit laid bare. I remember the sound of my own sobs, raw and ragged, echoing against the walls of Uruk, a testament to my own helplessness. Zara found me there, her eyes wide with disbelief, the weight of our shared sorrow crashing down upon us. We embraced, two siblings clinging to each other amidst the chaos, drawing strength from our shared grief. I felt her trembling body against mine, a reminder that we were still alive, still fighting, even as the world around us crumbled. In that embrace, I saw the flicker of hope amidst despair, a fragile flame that refused to be extinguished. But the battle wasn't over. A heavy silence fell over us, and then the distant sounds of marching feet broke through the stillness. I could feel the vibrations in the ground, a relentless tide of soldiers advancing, each step a harbinger of more pain. The echoes of their cries haunted me, an eerie symphony of glory and loss, of honor and betrayal. They would fight for Uruk, or die trying, and yet, what was glory when it was drenched in the blood of brothers? Zara, I whispered, urgent and desperate, we have to go. We cannot let this place swallow us whole. Her eyes, filled with fire and defiance, met mine. We fight, brother. We fight for Rummy, for our home. I wanted to argue, to tell her that vengeance would not fill the void left in our hearts, but the words died on my lips. Instead, I nodded, the weight of her resolve settling over us like a cloak. We were warriors now, bound together by loss, by the fires of our cities turning to ash and embers. As the sun blared red across the horizon, we stood against the backdrop of destruction, the air thick with the scent of dust and despair. I could feel the shadows creeping closer, could hear the whispers of the past taunting us, urging us to surrender. But we were not done yet. We would fight, not just for survival, but for every dream that had been crushed beneath the weight of war. The clock ticked in the distance, an ominous reminder that time was slipping through our fingers like sand. But we had each other, and amidst the chaos, that was a flicker of light. As we turned to face the oncoming storm, I felt the weight of our ancestors, the ghosts of Uruk and Ur surrounding us, their stories woven into our very souls. The battle was about to begin. Our hearts raced, a symphony of fear and determination, and I knew, deep down in my bones, this was just the beginning, a haunting dance of shadows and spirits, a struggle that would echo through the ages. And as the first cries of battle rang out, I remembered every heartbeat, every breath, and the promise of tomorrow, a promise that would linger, pulsing with life, even in the heart of darkness. The sun hung low, an angry red orb bleeding into the horizon, casting long shadows over the crumbling walls of Uruk. The air vibrated with the tension of a city on the edge. I remember standing there, the ground quaking beneath my feet, not from the tremors of the earth, but from the pounding hearts of a people teetering on chaos. The distant clash of iron rang out, a melody of impending doom, echoing the fears of every soul caught in this tumult, fear that coursed through the streets like a fever, a palpable pulse that thrummed against my skin. A woman, her face painted with the dust of despair, ran past me. Her eyes, wide and wild, bore the weight of loss. She clutched a child, wrapped tightly in her arms, as if the very act of holding could ward off the shadows creeping closer. I remember her gaze, piercing through the fray, the terror of a mother caught in a city of gods and monsters, her heart racing a frantic rhythm that mirrored the chaos surrounding her. And then there was Naram, a soldier with a heart that had turned to stone. His hands were stained, not just with blood, but with the echoes of choices made in desperation. I could see him there, standing at the precipice of his own morality, sword drawn, eyes narrowed against the chaos that swirled like dust in the wind. I remember, he muttered to himself, words rasping like dry leaves. I remember when I thought honor was everything. When death was a noble thing, not a shadow haunting every corner of this cursed city. I felt his anger, an uncontained fire, as he charged into the fray, facing an enemy as much a part of him as his own skin. The clamor of battle echoed in my ears, a cruel symphony playing to the rhythm of agony and despair. Each swing of his blade told a story, not just of bloodshed but of the heavy chains of expectation that bound him. He fought not only against the enemy, but against the tides of history that threatened to drown him. "Why must we always bleed for the gods?" he shouted, even as he plunged his sword deep into the chest of a rival, the heavy thud of flesh against steel resonating through the air. But the gods had long abandoned this place, their laughter replaced by the cries of the innocent and the tormented. I could almost see them, high above, cloaked in shadows, watching with vacant eyes as lives were extinguished, one after another, as if we were mere playthings in their hands. Across the plaza, a merchant named Uresh was caught in the chaos. I remember him trying to salvage his wares, the glint of his precious silver glimmering under the dimming sun. His voice rose above the din, desperate, pleading, "Not my goods. Take my life instead." But no one heard him. Each face was a mask of survival, lost in the mantra of self-preservation. I watched as he scrambled, slipping through the fingers of fate, grasping at memories of better days, of laughter shared over wine, of glorious feasts. The taste of rich bread and honey lingered on his tongue, long forgotten amidst the filth of war. "Do you remember," he cried to the heavens, "when we traded stories instead of blows? When dreams were forged under the stars, unmarred by blood?" But the stars above flickered with indifference, a mockery of his plight. Night descended, swallowing Uruk whole, and the darkness dripped with the scent of decay, of fallen dreams and shattered lives. I moved through the chaos, pulled by the magnetic force of despair and courage. The world felt heavy, each breath a struggle, each heartbeat a reminder of the fragility of existence. Uresh's silhouette flickered against the flames, dancing in a macabre waltz with fate. I wanted to shout, to reach out and grab him by the shoulders, to stop him from chasing after the fading light, but my voice was lost in the cacophony of conflict. All around me, shadows loomed, faces twisted in rage, sorrow, and desperation. I could see the flicker of hope in some, a defiance that flared like a candle in the storm. And yet, for every glimmer, there were 100 more consumed by darkness. I whispered into the night, I remember when love was the currency of life, not fear. Naram fell to his knees, the weight of his sword heavy in his calloused hands, and for a moment, the world stood still. The battlefield lay silent, as if the earth itself held its breath. He looked up at the sky, the stars swirling like ghosts in the inky blackness, and I could see it, the moment when the burden of his choices crashed down like a tidal wave. "What have I become?" he asked, a question that echoed in the void, a lament for the man he had lost amidst the chaos. Uresh stumbled upon him, their eyes meeting in a fleeting moment of recognition. Two souls adrift in a sea of darkness, both searching for the same thing, a glimpse of light in a world that had long forgotten the meaning of hope. The ground trembled beneath them, a reminder that even the earth could sense the weight of their sorrow. Together, Uresh said, his voice cracking, "We can change this. We can turn back the tides of blood." But could they? Could any of us? The winds howled in response, a mournful song that wrapped around us like a shroud, a reminder of the ghosts that lingered, of those lost to the endless cycle of conflict. A roar erupted from the distance, the clash of steel once again reverberating through the air, and the moment shattered like glass, splintering into a cacophony of desperation. Naram stood, resolute, the fire of defiance igniting once more within him. "For every soul we've lost," he shouted, "we will fight back." The weight of conflict bore down upon us, an unyielding force, and I felt the dizzying pull of our shared fates, a tapestry woven with threads of heartbreak, anger, and a glimmer of hope. The stars above spun, their distant light twinkling like the last remnants of dreams long extinguished, but somewhere deep within the chaos, a spark remained. A reminder that even in the darkest of nights, the human spirit clings to the light, ready to rise again, time and again. As the battle raged on, and the city of Uruk trembled under the weight of its own history, I could only watch, heart pounding, as the dance of conflict continued, an eternal waltz of despair and defiance. The night was far from over, and the echoes of our choices would ring through eternity, forever binding us, warriors, mothers, merchants, each of us a part of this relentless cycle. The end was nowhere in sight, it was merely the beginning of a new chapter, an unfinished story that rippled through the cosmos, begging to be told. The air crackles with tension. A thin veil of dust hangs like a shroud, weaving through the streets of Nineveh, whispering secrets of its impending doom. The sun hangs low, a blood-red eye glaring down, mocking the city that once knew such glory. I stand among them, a ghost in flesh, the heart racing like a war drum, as I watch the people, their faces drawn tight, eyes wide, reflecting the fear that gnaws at their very souls. They move like shadows, purpose lost in the suffocating heat, and I know then that they feel it too, that dread cloaked in silence, an omen that chokes the breath of life. Is it too late? A voice, raw and quivering, pulls me from my reverie. It's Ashur, a merchant I've known since the days when Nineveh was a beacon of prosperity. His hands tremble as he clutches a faded scroll, a relic of promises unfulfilled. I remember when we celebrated harvests with wine and laughter, he murmurs, his voice a fragile thread of nostalgia, not this despair, this choking dust. The memories claw at me, laughter echoing through grand halls, rich tapestries hanging like the dreams of gods. But now, all that remains is the spectre of what once was, the city teetering on the brink of ruin. Around us, the once bustling market lies eerily still, as if the very stones are holding their breath, waiting for judgment. And then there's Alia, a fierce warrior with a heart heavy as lead. She stands at the city gate, eyes scanning the horizon. We cannot afford to falter, she growls, her voice a low growl that rattles like thunder. In her hands, she wields a sword that has tasted blood, its hilt worn smooth by countless battles. But I feel the ground shifting beneath us. The walls may protect us, yet we are caged, trapped in our pride. I remember the first time I met Alia, her laughter ringing like a bell, sharp and clear against the backdrop of war. It was a sound that once filled me with hope. But now that hope feels like a distant memory, a cruel joke played by fate. The sky darkens, and the air thickens with tension, there's a storm brewing, but it's not the kind that brings rain. It's a tempest of greed and power. The Assyrian Empire, restless and hungry, lurks at the fringes, waiting for the moment to strike. What if they come? Ashur's voice trembles again, a haunting echo. What if this is the end? I can't bear to look into his eyes, the fear there is an abyss, pulling me down, threatening to swallow me whole. They will come, I whisper, though I can't bring myself to say it aloud. The fate of Nineveh hangs in the balance, a precarious thread, frayed and ready to snap. In the shadows, whispers flutter like moths around a flame. The gods have turned their backs on us, they say, voices dripping with despair. Look at the signs, the withering crops, the plague sweeping through our streets. I can almost feel the weight of those words pressing down, suffocating dreams beneath their hopelessness. Alia's gaze shifts to me, her fierce spirit a burning ember against the corruption around us. We will not go quietly, she declares, drawing strength from the very earth beneath her feet. I admire her tenacity, but inside, I feel a coldness seep into my bones. We can fight against the tide, but can we truly turn it back? As night envelops us, the city transforms, a ghostly figure against the stars. The buildings loom like ancient sentinels, their stones echoing with the laughter of a time long lost. I remember the stories, the legends of our ancestors, how they revered their kings as gods, how they built their empire on the backs of the broken. Yet even gods stumble. The air vibrates as the first horn sounds, a mournful call that tears through the silence. The Assyrian army is upon us, a dark wave cresting toward our walls. My heart races as I feel the ground shake beneath my feet, a beat that matches the drum of war, an unholy rhythm that binds us together in fear and resolve. Alia's eyes blaze with determination as she steps forward, the embodiment of defiance. We will not be forgotten, she shouts, rallying the few who remain willing to stand beside her. The flickering torches cast long shadows, distorting our figures into monstrous shapes, mirroring the chaos that brews in our hearts. I can't help but think of all we've lost, what we will lose, our homes, our families, our very souls. But then I see Asher, his shoulders stooped, a man broken by the weight of his dreams. What if we are no more than echoes in the wind, he whispers, and in that moment, I see the flicker of despair in his eyes. What if history forgets our names? With each clash of steel and the cries of the wounded, the night unfolds like a nightmare painted in blood. The walls tremble under the siege, a cacophony of conflict echoing through the air. We fight, but each swing of Alia's sword is a desperate plea, every fall of Asher's heart a reminder of our mortality. Time warps around us, memories flooding back in flashes of light and shadow. I remember the laughter that once filled these streets, the warmth of the sun against my skin, the love that breathed life into Nineveh. But now it all feels like a distant dream, a mirage slipping through my fingers. We are warriors, yes, but we are also fragile creatures, teetering on the edge of oblivion. And yet, amid the chaos, the flicker of hope stirs within me, a tiny flame against the vast darkness. Perhaps even in our darkest moments, we can rise like the phoenix from the ashes. But the question looms, heavy and ominous, will we? Will we find a way to turn back the tide, or will we become mere whispers in the night, lost to the past? As the first light of dawn breaks over the horizon, I know that whatever happens next, our stories will intertwine with the fabric of time, woven into the history of Nineveh, lingering like a breath on the edge of oblivion. And so the battle rages on, a relentless tide, echoing through the ages, as the shadows of our fates entwine, each heartbeat a step toward an unknown future. Time ticks on, merciless and cold, as we stand at the precipice, not knowing if we will rise or fall. The air is thick, a suffocating haze of ash and blood, hanging heavy like a curse over the ruins of Nineveh. I breathe it in, hot, acrid, a reminder of violence that once thundered through these streets. I can almost hear the screams, a cacophony echoing through time, piercing the veil of history. Shadows shift in the half-light, curling around the crumbling stone walls like the ghosts of those who lived and died here. The city pulses with a rhythm, a heartbeat that thrums beneath the surface, a relentless reminder of its brutal legacy. I remember the first time I stood before the great walls, towering and impenetrable, and felt a shiver skitter down my spine. I was young, naive, full of curiosity that was bulldozed by the weight of what these stones had witnessed. Every inch of this capital, this so-called jewel of the Assyrian Empire, whispers of conquest and despair. The grandeur of the palaces, where kings once dined on roast lamb and whispered plans of destruction, now stands in stark contrast to the blood-soaked soil beneath my feet. The irony is sickening. There's Ashurbanipal, the last of the great kings, whose ambition was a double-edged sword, gleaming with promise yet stained with the blood of the vanquished. I can almost see him in my mind's eye, striding through the halls, eyes filled with dreams of glory as he amassed libraries and conquered lands. But for every scroll of knowledge, what treasures of suffering were buried beneath? His conquests were not merely victories, they were executions, the kind that left the world trembling. I remember his enemies piled like discarded husks, remnants of lives snuffed out for the sake of power. And there is Ishtar, a priestess who once danced beneath the moonlight, her laughter echoing like chimes across the Euphrates, now entwined with the cries of the dying. She was a girl of fire, passion ignited in her very soul, yet torn by the expectations of her station. Each ritual she performed, a pirouette of blood and devotion, bound her closer to the fate of a city hungry for violence. She loved fiercely, and her heart bore the weight of the empire. Love could not shield her from the horror that lurked just beyond the silk curtains, waiting, like a wolf in the night. I remember standing with her beneath the stars, brushing hands as we spoke of dreams, of worlds where cruelty did not rule. The cosmos felt infinite, yet here, in the city that promised so much, it was all a facade. "Do you think we can escape?" she whispered, voice trembling with desperation. But escape was a myth, a cruel joke played by the gods. The city walls, once symbols of strength, had become prisons, stifling hope and devouring innocence. The sun has begun to set, casting long shadows that stretch and twist like the tortured souls of those who fell in battle. I can see them, faces distorted in agony, an endless procession of the forgotten. They haunt the edges of my vision, demanding to be acknowledged. I remember their names, their stories, lost in the pages of history, each life extinguished with a swift brutality that sends chills racing through my body. Ishtar, I whisper, sensing her presence in the air, the weight of her sorrow blending with my own. What have we become? Her laughter echoes back, brittle and haunting. We were once children of dreams, dancing in the moonlight, now we are but shadows among the ruins, marked by the scars of our ancestors' violence. The weight of the past lies heavy on our shoulders, yet we march forward, burdened by the legacy of a city that devoured its own. The night grows darker, the stars dimmed by the smoke that drifts like lost souls across the sky. In the distance, the echoes of a battle thunder, a reminder that violence does not die, it merely sleeps, waiting to awaken at the first scent of blood. I remember Ashurbanipal's campaigns, each more devastating than the last, a relentless swell of fury that left cities in ashes. His reign, a brutal symphony of suffering played out across the plains, reminds me that the thirst for power is insatiable, a demon that gnaws at the heart of humanity. How many lives were lost at the foot of these towering walls? How many dreams shattered beneath the weight of ambition? Each stone bears witness, each crack a testament to the pain that lingers in the air. I can feel it, a raw pulse that thrums beneath the surface, a warning that history is never far behind. The ruins pulsate with life, a sinister dance of ghosts encircling me, pulling me deeper into their tragedy. Ishtar, I call into the void, feeling her spirit writhe in the folds of the darkness. Are we destined to repeat this cycle? Can we ever escape the violence that binds us? The silence that follows is deafening, a chasm of despair that threatens to swallow me whole. I remember her gaze, fierce and determined, yet haunted by the weight of expectation. She was stronger than I, her heart beat with a ferocity that pushed back against the tide of destruction. We will not let it define us, she would say, but the words felt like leaves in a storm, pretty, yet ultimately powerless. The night closes in, shadows wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. In this moment, I am utterly alone with the ghosts of Nineveh. I remember the tapestry of their lives, woven with threads of hope and despair, joy and sorrow. Each thread pulls at my heart, demanding recognition, demanding that I bear witness. I can almost see their faces, etched in the fabric of time, a haunting array of emotions frozen in the moment before their world fell apart. And just like that, the sky crackles, a roar of thunder breaking the stillness. The city trembles, as if it remembers every drop of blood spilled on its streets, every life lost in the name of empire. I can feel it, the weight of history pressing down on me, urging me to confront the truth that lies buried beneath layers of stone and sorrow. The night is alive, a cacophony of voices crying out, each one pulling me deeper into the abyss, deeper into the violent heart of the Assyrian Empire's capital. I am left with a choice, to turn away, to flee from the darkness that beckons, or to stand and face it, to honor the stories that demand to be told. The walls of Nineveh loom large, a silent witness to the violence that shaped not just a city, but the very essence of humanity itself. As the storm rages on, I know there is no turning back. The past is a living entity, breathing and pulsing, waiting for someone brave enough to confront it and, perhaps, to reclaim what was lost amidst the chaos. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of burnt spices and something else, something metallic and bitter, as the sun dipped below the jagged silhouette of ancient walls. The city of Babylon trembled on the brink of chaos. I could feel it, a low rumble in my chest, like the distant growl of a storm. The streets were a living canvas of desperation, where the cries of the wounded intertwined with the whispering shadows of the past. I stood there, heart racing, sweat slicking my palms, my breath catching in my throat. Layla was running. I could see her, hair cascading like a dark waterfall behind her, eyes wide with fear, a wild doe caught in a snare. She darted past crumbling stone structures, a blur of frantic energy. It was not just the soldiers chasing her, it was the ghosts of her memories, claws scraping at her heels. The memory of a love she lost, of promises whispered beneath a moon that felt far more distant now. She had come to Babylon seeking freedom, yet chaos clung to her like a second skin. I remember the taste of salt, she gasped, glancing back only briefly, the terror in her gaze cutting deeper than any blade. Salt from the ocean, from tears. It all blends together. The words spilled from her lips, raw and jagged as she stumbled over cobblestones, the weight of her past thrumming through every heartbeat. I felt her fear, her heartbreak. It was palpable, a ghost hovering over her shoulder. And then there was Rummy, the soldier with eyes like molten bronze, encased in armor that gleamed ominously under the pale light of the dying sun. He should have been a figure of strength, a protector. But the truth was far less glorious. Inside, he was unraveling, the chaos of war gnawing at his insides like a ravenous beast. "I remember the laughter of my sister," he muttered, the words spilling out as he gripped his sword, knuckles white. Before the chaos. Before, a shudder of anguish cut through him, a memory half-formed, but haunting. His gaze was fixed on the horizon, where the smoke of despair curled upwards like the fingers of the dead, reaching for the stars that seemed indifferent to their suffering. The weight of his duty crushed him. Each soldier he faced a reflection of family, friends, people he once knew. "Do I fight for them, or against them?" he whispered, the question echoing in the hollow spaces between his thoughts. Babylon was a city that twisted everything it touched into a grotesque parody of life, and Rummy stood on that precipice, teetering between duty and humanity. The ground shook suddenly, a tremor that radiated through the ancient stones, rattling the dust of centuries. Layla stumbled, her foot slipping on the rocky surface as she fell, arms splayed like a bird caught in a storm. "Help!" she screamed, the word a desperate plea that clawed at my insides. I could feel the pulse of the city, the beating heart of chaos that breathed life into her fear. It was intoxicating, overwhelming, and I was swept away in the tide. Rummy was there, rushing towards her, a beacon in the chaos. But as he reached for her, a shadow swept across the ground, a dark figure emerging from the chaos like a phantom. The general, a spectre of authority with eyes like cold steel and a mouth twisted into a cruel smile. "You think you can escape?" he taunted, taking a step forward, the very embodiment of inevitability. His laughter echoed, a chilling sound that made my skin prickle, and I felt Layla's panic radiating through the space between us. "I remember when I was naive," she cried, scrambling back, pressing against the unforgiving wall. "I thought love could save me. But all it brought was this." Tears streamed down her face, each drop a testament to dreams shattered, to hopes buried beneath the weight of reality. Rummy's heart twisted in response, torn between his duty and the fierce desire to shield her from this nightmare. In this city of chaos, where time seemed to stretch and bend, every moment felt like 1,000 lifetimes of agony. The general's smile widened, and the shadows deepened around him. "Love is a weakness. Trust? A folly." He took another step, the air thickening with his presence. "In Babylon, you must embrace chaos or be consumed by it." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, a truth that twisted inside me like a dagger. I felt the vastness of the cosmos pressing down, the weight of endless history echoing in the alleyways, whispering secrets of the fallen, of those who had loved and lost in this very place. For a moment, everything froze. Time stood still. The world narrowed to just Layla, Rummy, and that ghastly figure. The chaos around them pulsed like a heartbeat, loud and unrelenting. I could see it in their eyes, that flicker of raw desperation, that hunger for something more, a flicker of hope fighting against the encroaching darkness. "Fight!" I wanted to scream, to urge them forward, to leap into the fray and grasp at the threads of their fates. But chaos had its own rhythm, its own cruel dance, and I was merely a witness in this grand theater of despair. I could hear Rummy's voice breaking through the tension. "We can't let him win." He took a step forward, resolve igniting within him like a spark in the night. The fear in Layla's eyes met his, and for a heartbeat, they were two souls intertwined, bound by the chaos, yet yearning for something more. "I won't let it end like this," she breathed, and I felt the weight of her words settle over us, wrapping us in a shroud of defiance. The shadows flickered around them, the city of Babylon trembling at the crossroads of fate, chaos and hope dancing like flames in the wind. And as the confrontation loomed closer, the lines between love and despair blurred, each character's journey weaving into the fabric of the city, a tapestry of broken dreams and unyielding spirits. The moment was alive, electric, and I strained to breathe, feeling the urgency pulse like a living thing. Time stretched, the echoes of their struggles reverberating through the ages, and I knew the tale was far from over. Here, in the cradle of chaos, love wrestled with despair, and hope flickered like a candle in the dark. The heart of Babylon beat on, relentless, and I held my breath, poised on the precipice of what came next, waiting for the storm to break. The night was a tapestry woven from shadows and whispers, the air thick with the scent of smoke and fear. I stood, heart pounding, beneath the archway of the great ziggurat, the pulse of Babylon thrumming like a war drum in my ears. A distant wail echoed through the cobblestone streets, a lament that seemed to rise from the very stones of the city itself. I remember the way the moon hung low, a ghostly eye, watching a dance of chaos unfold below. "Don't look away," she had said, her voice barely a breath above the cacophony. It was Ishtar, her fierce spirit igniting the night, a woman whose beauty was eclipsed only by her ambition. She was a storm wrapped in silk, a siren who commanded respect and fear like a puppeteer with strings made of sinew. "They will burn everything you love," she warned, those dark eyes glinting with the fire of prophecy. And who could doubt her? In an age when kings toyed with destinies as if they were merely pawns on a board, Ishtar was both player and game. But it wasn't just the rulers who writhed in this tempest. A shadow slipped beside me, his presence as familiar as the pulse of my own heart. Marduk, the king of the new order, stood with a tension that crackled like the embers of a recent fire, his hand gripping a dagger that gleamed in the moonlight. His resolve was a shard of ice in a sea of flames, and I could see the cracks beginning to form. "Ishtar," he breathed, desperation overlaid with fierce determination, "this power, it will consume us." "Power," she scoffed, the flicker of a smirk dancing on her lips. "Or salvation? We are not merely players, Marduk. We are the gods of our own fate." The weight of her words hung between us, thick and suffocating. I remember the time when I believed in the clarity of purpose. Now, I felt the edges of my own resolve fraying, my heart a pendulum swinging between hope and despair. Babylon was a cauldron, boiling over with ambition, lust, and betrayal, and we were its unwilling ingredients. Marduk's gaze darted to the shadows that clung to the walls like phantoms. "You think they will let us rule? You think they will bow before us?" His voice cracked, a mournful echo of the past. I could see visions of blood and betrayals dancing behind his eyes, memories of comrades turned enemies, dreams of glory twisted into nightmares. "The old kings will rise again. They are not dead. They are waiting." I shivered, remembering the tales of Nebuchadnezzar, the king who unleashed madness and fury upon the world, whose reign was an orchestra of chaos. The whispers of his name still haunted the alleys, a ghost that lingered like the smoke from burnt offerings. In this city of contradictions, where the sacred and the profane entwined, the spectre of his infamous legacy loomed over us, relentless and unforgiving. "Then let them rise," Ishtar declared, her voice ringing like a clarion call. "But we will be ready." Her hand clasped Marduk's, fingers intertwining like roots groping for nourishment in barren soil. There was fire in her, a madness that both terrified and thrilled me. "We are the architects of our own destiny." But destiny is a fickle mistress, as I soon learned. The ground beneath us trembled, and with it, the very fabric of Babylon seemed to shift and twist. The air crackled with the palpable tension of 1,000 lives hanging in the balance. I could feel the city's heartbeat synchronizing with my own, a wild, frenetic rhythm that echoed my fear. Then it happened. A thunderclap of betrayal, sharp as a blade through flesh. Cormac, a former friend, surged from the shadows, eyes wild and desperate, his sword raised high, glinting ominously. "You think you can rule," he snarled, rage boiling over like molten lava. "You're nothing but puppets. You're nothing but fools." In that moment, time stretched and warped. I remember the instant my heart turned to stone. I saw Marduk's face, a mask of shock and realization, as if the universe had just revealed a truth that had been lurking in the corners of his soul. The dagger slipped from his fingers, clattering against the stones, a sound swallowed by the roar of chaos. Ishtar stepped forward, defiance radiating from her like heat from the sun. "Do it," she screamed, her voice cutting through the tumult. "Strike me down if you dare. But know this, if you seek to take this city, you'll have to walk over our corpses first." Cormac faltered. There was something in her gaze, a fire that ignited the very air around us. I could see his resolve shattering like fragile glass, pieces scattering in all directions, lost forever to the winds of fate. And then came the silence, the eerie, bone-chilling silence that followed violence. A pause where hearts stopped, breaths held, and destinies hung in the balance. I remember the weight of it, the suffocating pressure that pressed against my chest, the moment of clarity that cut through the fog of chaos. In that surreal stillness, I saw it all reflected in their eyes, Marduk's uncertainty, Ishtar's fierce resolve, and Cormac's wavering sanity. This was Babylon, a city built on the bones of the past, teetering on the edge of a cliff, ready to plunge into the abyss. But no one moved. The world held its breath, waiting for the next heartbeat, the next battle cry, the next moment that would reshape the very essence of this tumultuous era. This was no longer just a fight for power, it was a dance with destiny, a clash of spirits that would echo through the ages, their songs woven into the very fabric of time. And as I stood there, a mere observer caught in the maelstrom, I couldn't help but wonder what would rise from the ashes of this chaos. Would it be a new dawn, or simply another night cloaked in shadows, where ghosts of the past lingered just beyond reach, always watching, always waiting? The air was thick, electric, a palpable tension that hung over the shadowy streets of Carthage like a shroud. I can still hear it, the distant clash of metal, the anguished cries of men and beasts. It felt as if the very ground trembled beneath my feet, a prelude to chaos, a warning. I stood there, heart pounding, my breath caught in my throat, waiting for the next wave of destruction to crash down upon us. Zura! The voice pierced through the din, sharp and desperate. It belonged to Malik, a war general with a reputation carved from blood and betrayal. His eyes, usually as steely as the swords he wielded, were wide with panic. We must go. Now! But how could I move? The streets pulsed with dark shadows, remnants of my past swirling around me like ghosts. I wanted to scream, to tell him that I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not before I faced the specters that haunted me, the memories of my brother, lost in the fires of war, his laughter forever extinguished. Zura! His voice again, raw, almost pleading. We have to escape this madness. Madness! The word echoed in my mind, a cruel reminder of the treachery that had seeped into our very bones. The betrayal of allies, the whispered promises of peace that had crumbled to dust. I could taste that dust, gritty and bitter, on my lips, a reminder that nothing here was sacred. I caught a glimpse of his face, a mask of desperation. Malik was more than a soldier, he was a brother in arms, a friend, yet I felt the weight of betrayal in his presence. It gnawed at me, a familiar ache. I had trusted him once, with my heart and with my life, but the wars had twisted our bond, wrapped it in layers of doubt and fear. Zura, please! I turned to him, my heart a frenzied drum. What will we find if we run? More wolves? More blood? My voice was fierce, cutting through the chaos. I could see it in his eyes, a flicker of sorrow, a flash of understanding. He knew what I had lost, what I could never regain. But before he could speak, the night erupted. A deafening roar filled the air, and the ground shook violently, as if the gods themselves were unleashing their fury. Flames burst forth from a nearby building, the light illuminating the faces of the terrified citizens, twisted in horror. Run! Malik shouted, his grip tightening around my wrist, dragging me away from the impending doom. But I fought him, rooted in place, the weight of my memories anchoring me. I remember, I whispered, the words falling from my lips like tears. I remember the sound of laughter, the warmth of his embrace. My brother's face danced before my eyes, a haunting apparition of the life that had been stolen from me. Malik, sensing my turmoil, knelt before me, his expression softening. Zura, he would want you to live. We can't let this city take us too. I looked into his eyes, searching for the truth buried beneath the turmoil of battle. He was right, I realized, but the fear of losing another piece of myself held me captive. And what if living means becoming something monstrous? What if we betray ourselves in the process? The question hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. As I searched his gaze, I saw the flicker of his own doubts, a reflection of the man he had been before the war had carved him into a weapon. The chaos swirled around us, a tempest of rage and despair. I could hear the cries of the fallen echoing through the streets, a chorus of lamentation that pierced my heart. Each scream was a reminder of the sacrifices, the lives exchanged for the fickle promise of victory. Listen. Malik's voice pulled me back, his hand gripping my shoulder tightly. We can't let the ghosts of our past drown us in this sea of fire. We must fight for the future. A spark ignited within me, a flicker of hope amidst the shadows. And what future can there be in a city that devours its own? He hesitated, and in that moment, I saw the truth reflected in his eyes, the burden of leadership, the weight of decisions made in blood. We'll carve one out, he said, determination lacing his words. Together. Just then, an explosion rocked the street, flames shooting toward the heavens. The heat enveloped us, fierce and unapologetic, as if the universe itself was punishing us for our audacity to dream of survival. I felt the heat on my skin as I stumbled back, my heart racing, my mind spinning. What about Karima? I gasped, the memory of my sister, her face etched in worry, igniting a new wave of fear. She's still out there. Malik's expression shifted, a flicker of anguish crossing his features. Karima had been our light, a beacon amidst the darkness, and the thought of her trapped in this maelstrom twisted my gut. We have to find her. We can't leave anyone behind. With renewed urgency, we pressed on through the chaos, dodging flames and crumbling stone, the shadows dancing around us as if mocking our every step. Each moment was a heartbeat, a breath held in trembling silence. The city, once a sanctuary, was now a battleground where trust had become a treacherous game. The air was thick with the stench of smoke and despair, the echoes of betrayal lingering like ghosts. I remember the night we swore to protect this city, to stand together against the darkness. Now, that promise felt like a cruel joke, an illusion shattered by the realities of war. Time slipped through my fingers like sand, each grain a reminder of what had been lost. I could feel the weight of history pressing down upon me, a reminder that Carthage was not merely a city but a living testament to the cycles of love, betrayal, and survival. As we turned another corner, I caught sight of a figure amidst the chaos, small and trembling. My heart lurched, Karima! The world around me faded, the flames dimming as I rushed toward her, my fears momentarily eclipsed by the urgency of love. Karima! I screamed, my voice raw, breaking through the cacophony of war. But even as I ran, I felt the shadows whispering behind me, a reminder that in Carthage, trust was a fleeting illusion and the ghosts of the past would never truly let us go. The night was heavy, the air thick with the scent of salt and the tangible weight of anticipation. The moon hung low, a ghostly watcher over the shores of Carthage, where men whispered of glory and conquest. I remember the first time I felt it, the pulse of the earth beneath my feet, the murmurs of dreams that felt more like nightmares. The horizon, dark and restless, beckoned with promises of power. My heart raced, for every shadow carried the echo of lost souls, their cries swallowed by the sea. Hamilcar Barca stood on the precipice of destiny, his fierce eyes scanning the waves, each crest a fleeting moment of potential. I remember how he clenched his fists, the knuckles white, as if to ward off the ghosts of those who had fallen before him. They called him a general, a warbringer, but to me, he was a man trapped between the weight of legacy and the pull of ambition. I will not fail them, he whispered into the night, and I felt the tremor in his voice. Was it fear or fervor? Perhaps both. His son, Hannibal, lingered in the shadows, a spectre of torment and brilliance. He bore the burden of expectation with a defiance that cut like a dagger. I watched him, the flickering light from the torch casting haunting shadows across his face, each flicker a reminder of the choices yet to come. You are the future, Hamilcar had told him, and those words hung heavy, an anvil around the boy's neck. He was a tempest, chaotic and wild, with dreams of marching across mountains, through untamed lands, to lay waste to Rome. But I also saw the boy trapped within, each gleam of ambition was tempered by a flicker of doubt. As the first clash of swords echoed through the valley, the air vibrated with the cries of warriors, a cacophony that would haunt the souls of men. I remember the stench, the iron tang mingling with sweat, a grotesque perfume of valor. Hamilcar's troops surged forward, a wave of bronze and fury, but with every advance, I felt the ground shudder beneath the weight of the past. The ghosts of their forefathers hovered at the edges, whispering dark prophecies, their skeletal fingers grasping at the edges of the living. Fight! For the legacy of our ancestors! Hamilcar shouted, but I saw the trembling in his hands. The vision he fought for was not just of territory or riches, it was a legacy soaked in blood. The question echoed, a haunting refrain, what price would they pay? The answer lay not in conquest but in the unraveling of their very souls. And then, the sky split open. A storm of chaos descended, and the stark realization hit me, this was not just a battle, it was a reckoning. I watched as Hannibal, with wild eyes and a heart full of fire, plunged into the fray, his resolve unyielding. He felt invincible, yet I saw the glimmer of fear, the weight of expectation crashing down like a tidal wave. His destiny was intertwined with every thrust and parry, each clash of metal a heartbeat in the grand symphony of war. In that cataclysmic moment, I felt the world shift. The spectre of Rome loomed larger, the shadows stretching across the Mediterranean like a dark omen. A clash of titans, two empires vying for dominance, their ambitions clashing with the ferocity of thunderstorms. I could taste the bitterness of betrayal in the air, a reminder that dreams often come with a steep price. Hamilcar's ambition was a double-edged sword, cutting through the fabric of peace, leaving only a gaping wound. Days turned into nights, and nights into blood-soaked memories. I watched as the Carthaginian forces ascended, their victories igniting the flames of pride and hubris. But in each triumph, the whispers grew louder, foretelling a downfall, a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of their empire. The gods did not sleep, they watched, and their anger brewed beneath the surface. Hannibal's heart raced as he crossed the Alps, a giant among the shadows, the icy winds biting at his resolve. He was a phantom, riding through history, each hoofbeat echoing like thunder. But deep within him lingered a tempest of turmoil. What if I fail? He mused in the silence of the night, the stars above indifferent to his plight. The weight of expectation was suffocating, and the ghosts of fallen heroes resonated like a chorus of despair. I remember the day he stood before his army, flames dancing in the darkness, illuminating the faces of the men who dared to follow him. Those eyes, filled with hope and fear, reflected back the burden he bore. "We fight for Carthage," he bellowed, but the words were a fragile mask, a shield against the storm brewing in his own heart. He was both leader and outcast, a visionary held captive by the chains of ambition, and I felt an undeniable urge to scream into the void. The clash with Rome was inevitable, a collision of titans that would shake the heavens. I could sense the tension building, the air crackling like a charged storm. The city of Carthage, once a beacon of power, stood on the precipice of destruction, a fragile flame flickering in the face of an oncoming tempest. It was a stunning irony, the very ambition that fueled their rise now threatening to consume them entirely. I remember the faces of the fallen, their blood staining the earth, whispers of unfulfilled dreams swirling like dust in the wind. Hamilcar, driven by pride, and Hannibal, a son longing for his father's approval, both caught in a web of their own making. Each battle, each strategy, a desperate attempt to outwit fate, to escape the inexorable grasp of their past. And as the final confrontation loomed, I felt the weight of history pressing down, a relentless tide that could not be stopped. The stage was set, the actors ready, and the shadows danced in anticipation. The Punic Wars were more than mere battles, they were the embodiment of dreams and nightmares, a relentless tide of ambition crashing against the shores of fate. The end was approaching, and the only certainty was the echo of war, the haunting refrain that would never truly fade. In the heart of chaos, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the question lingered, a reminder that time is a relentless predator. What would they become? What sacrifices would shape their destiny? I held my breath, feeling the electric pulse of history, forever entwined with the souls of those who dared to dream. And in that moment, the world held its breath, waiting for the storm to break. The air was thick with the acrid scent of sweat and iron, a palpable tension clinging to the very stones of Sparta. In the stillness before dawn, the ground seemed to pulse beneath me, the heartbeat of a city built on war. I stood at the edge of the training grounds, the sound of clashing bronze echoing in my ears, each strike a promise, each grunt a prayer. It was here, where young boys transformed into relentless warriors, that I felt the merciless grip of destiny tightening around my throat. I remember the fear in my brother's eyes as he faced his opponent, the glint of bronze swords flashing like the cruel smile of fate. Lysander, oh, Lysander! Strong, stubborn, with a heart too big for this brutal world. He was 14, barely more than a child, yet here he was, stripped of innocence and dressed in the uniform of a soldier. Fight, or be broken, the voices whispered, a mantra drumming through my skull. I felt the weight of it in my bones. Do you see them? He asked me, breathless and desperate. Do you see how they move? Like shadows, like ghosts. I couldn't respond, my throat was locked tight, the truth too cruel to bear. The shadows danced around him, mocking, taunting, and I wished I could shield him from their reach, but I was bound by the same iron chains of duty that shackled every Spartan. Fight! The trainer barked. The command sliced through the air like a knife, and Lysander lunged forward, the world narrowing to the point where his sword met another, a crash that could wake the gods. And in that moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes, a spark of life, a flicker of dread. He was just a boy, caught in a game of survival he hadn't chosen. Around us, the men of Sparta moved with grim precision, their muscles honed by years of rigorous training. I could see them, their faces hardened by the weight of expectation, the lines of loyalty etched deep into their brows. They were warriors, yes, but they were also fathers, brothers, sons, each one hiding a heart that beat with the same rhythm as my own. Then there was Andromeda, fierce and wild, her spirit untamed like the winds that swept across the valley. She ran through the streets, a whirlwind of defiance, her hair flying behind her like a banner of rebellion. I will not be a pawn, she would shout, her voice ringing clear against the clangor of swords. I am a daughter of Sparta. But even her bravery could not shield her from the truth that loomed like a shadow cast by the city's walls. Every battle she fought, every challenge she faced, pulled her deeper into the mire of expectation. I had watched her train, every swing of her sword a defiance against her fate, yet each day I feared the weight of tradition would crush her spirit. You are too much of a girl, they would say, their laughter echoing like thunder, drowning in the silence of her resolve. One fateful morning, they called for her. They wanted her to prove herself, to stand before the council of elders, to be weighed and measured against the iron of her male counterparts. I watched her square her shoulders, the fabric of her tunic taut against her skin, the light of dawn glinting in her fierce gaze. I will not break, she whispered fiercely, her breath shaking with determination. But I saw it, the tremor beneath the surface, a fear, a flicker of doubt. And when the clash began, when steel met steel, the world fell away, leaving only the echo of their strikes and the resonance of our hearts. I was thrust into the fray, the conflict around us swirling like a storm, pounding like the drums of war. The fear was a living thing, wrapping around my throat, squeezing tight, but I could not falter, not when my brother fought for his life, not when Andromeda danced through danger like a flame in the dark. The moment stretched endlessly, each heartbeat thundering with the weight of our failures and our losses, the price of our Spartan existence. I could see Lysander falter, just for a moment, the flash of uncertainty crossing his face as his opponent pressed forward. Fight! I screamed, the word tearing from my throat, a raw desperation spilling into the chaos. Then, an explosion of sound, a crack, a shout, a heartbeat lost. Andromeda fell, her breath escaping like a wounded bird, and the world around me shattered. The warriors halted, a chilling silence blanketing the ground, the echoes of their battle fading into nothing. My heart raced, a frantic shout against the stillness. She lay there, a warrior brought low, and I felt the breath catch in my throat, a weight I could not lift. And in that moment, everything blurred. The training, the beating drums of war, the relentless cycle of blood and honor, it all twisted, tangled into a snare that threatened to choke the life from us. I wanted to scream, to rage against this fate that demanded so much, yet gave so little. What was the worth of a warrior when the world crumbled beneath their feet? But the city was alive, a beast that swallowed our cries, demanding more blood as it fed on our souls. And even as I knelt beside Andromeda, even as I reached for her hand, I felt the echoes of the past crashing into the present, the whispers of our ancestors, the shadows of our dreams, all converging in the unforgiving embrace of Sparta. The sun rose higher, painting the sky in hues of crimson, reflecting the blood spilled not only on the ground but within our hearts. The fight was never just an act of valor, it was a ritual, a curse that bound us to the cycle of violence. And as I held Andromeda's lifeless hand, I could feel the specters of our dreams slipping away, one by one, like grains of sand catching the wind. In the quiet that followed, a haunting realization settled in my bones. Here we were, lost in a world that demanded our loyalties yet offered only shadows in return. The echoes of our struggles resonated like the distant calls of forgotten gods, reminding us that in Sparta, we were not just warriors, we were ghosts of our own making, forever haunted by a militaristic society that demanded our hearts while leaving our souls to wither in the dust. And as darkness began to drape over the horizon, I knew the fight was far from over. The city stirred, its pulse quickening as another cycle began, and we would stand, swords drawn, hearts pounding, ready to face the ghosts of our past. The weight of duty would never lift, and the shadows would remain, ever present, ever watchful, urging us onward into the abyss. The clash of metal rang like a sinister wedding bell, echoing across the rugged plains of Laconia. Blooded sandals stamped hard against the dirt, the ground trembling beneath the weight of 1,000 armored beasts. I remember the stench. I remember the panic spreading like wildfire, a fear so tangible that it clawed at my throat, choking the screams before they could escape. The sun hung low, a crimson orb caught in a web of smoke and ash, casting what felt like the last light we'd ever see. "Hold the line!" The voice, raw and desperate, tore through the din. It was Lycurgus, my brother, his eyes fierce points of flame, ready to consume or be consumed. I couldn't help but admire the way he stood there, a sentinel against the darkness. But beneath that ironclad exterior was a tremor, a flicker of uncertainty. I knew it well, we had grown up amidst the relentless training of the agoge, the brutal rites that stripped us bare and forged us anew in the fire of discipline. "Fight for your home," he yelled again, but I saw it, the momentary crack, the chink in his armor. The very idea of home was slipping away, fragmented like the jagged edges of a broken shield. I felt the familiar pang of longing, the ache for the sun-drenched hills of Sparta, the laughter of children echoing in the distance, innocence untouched by the sword. But here we stood, amidst the chaos, soldiers of an empire built on sweat, blood, and iron. The Spartiates, they called us. The proud warriors, the elite. But what was pride when it danced so dangerously close to madness? Every heartbeat thumped with the weight of expectations, our society, our culture crafted from the raw materials of warfare, of glory and honor, of relentless conquest. Then there was Helena, a woman whose spirit burned brighter than any sword. I had seen her in the training grounds, her fierce determination cutting through the air, but today, she was different, her gaze flicked between the dying and the dead. "They're just boys," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread, breaking beneath the weight of reality. "Why do we do this?" I clenched my fist, the steel of my sword biting into my palm. This was Sparta, a city where the weak were discarded like refuse, where the only currency was the glory of battle. The words she spoke were a dagger to my heart, twisting painfully. I wanted to tell her that our blood was the price of peace, that the gods demanded tribute, but I couldn't find the voice. Instead, I could only feel the echo of our society's cruel truth, a wolf pack where only the strongest survived, where boys became men through the crucible of violence, and love was a soft, distant dream, tainted by the mud of war. The battlefield was a canvas smeared with shades of horror. Every fallen warrior was a ghost, a whisper of lives that could have been. I remember, I breathed, as if to invoke their names, to keep them alive a moment longer. I remember laughter. But the laughter had turned to an eerie silence, the lull before the storm that was about to descend. I caught Lycurgus's eye, his expression a storm, a maelstrom of duty and despair. "We fight for them," he said, tilting his head toward the remnants of our city, draped in shadows. "For our mothers, our fathers." But the words felt hollow, a chant to ward off the suffocating gloom of doubt. The mothers and fathers that shaped us, who raised us to be warriors, were they not the same who cradled the dreams of peace? In our quest for dominion, had we not become the monsters we feared? I saw Helena's face, the way her brows knit together, the vulnerability beneath her warrior's veneer. She was a tapestry of strength and fragility, a tapestry I couldn't tear my gaze from. "Do you think they will remember us?" she asked, her voice trembling like a leaf caught in the wind. "When this is over?" I wanted to promise her that they would. I wanted to tell her that the bards would sing of our bravery, our unyielding spirit. But the truth lay heavy between us, unsaid, a dark cloud looming on the horizon. They would remember us, yes, but for what? For the bloodshed? For the lives shattered beneath the boots of our ambition? And then the charge came, a wave of bodies crashing together, a cacophony of pain and fury. I was swept into the fray, the world blurring around me, a whirlwind of chaos. I fought with everything I had, yet each swing of my sword felt like a betrayal. I saw Lycurgus at the edge of my vision, deflecting a blow, his strength a fleeting dream amidst the nightmare. The weight of our society pressed down on us like a suffocating fog, each life taken a step further into the abyss, a descent into madness cloaked in valor. I could feel the pulse of the universe in that moment, the stars twinkling above like distant eyes watching, judging. Every clash of steel was a heartbeat, every shout a prayer to the gods who seemed to have forgotten us. We were Spartans, forged in the fires of warfare, our very essence written in blood and ash. But what was the cost? What were we becoming? In the throes of battle, I caught a glimpse of Helena, her movements as fluid as water, as fierce as flame. She fought like a lioness, but I saw the weariness creeping into her bones, the way she faltered just for a heartbeat. For a moment, our eyes locked, and I felt a surge of desperation, a connection that transcended the chaos around us. "We fight for love," I wanted to shout, but the words were lost in the fray, buried beneath the onslaught. And then I saw it, a shadow looming over Lycurgus, a figure wreathed in darkness. My brother's back turned, the briefest moment of vulnerability, time slowed, suspended in the impending horror. I reached out, a futile gesture, my heart pounding like a war drum. But the universe was unforgiving, fate had its own design. The world around me faded to a ghostly silence, a void where time itself stood still. I could sense the weight of our choices, the gravity of our existence, the roles we had played in this tragic theater of war. The clang of swords, the cries of the fallen, they became a haunting melody, resonating through my very soul. In that heartbeat, I realized that we were not just warriors of Sparta, we were echoes of a flawed society, reflections of dreams and nightmares intertwined. And as I stood poised on the precipice of chaos, I felt the call of the cosmos, the whisper of ghosts long past. They beckoned me to remember, not just the glory, but the cost. The fragile balance of life and death, the choices that lingered like shadows, threatening to consume all that we held dear. The battlefield was not just a place of war, it was a crucible of our humanity, a mirror held up to the darkest corners of our souls. "Hold the line," Lycurgus's words rang in my ears, but the line was blurring, shifting like quicksand beneath our feet. Perhaps, in this maelstrom, in the very heart of destruction, lay the seeds of something greater. Perhaps, if we survived, we could redefine what it meant to be Spartan. What it meant to fight, to love, to dream. The clash continued, an orchestra of despair and resilience. And in that moment, as we stood on the brink, the answers remained elusive, swirling in the shadows, waiting to reveal themselves. I felt the tide rising, a tide of emotion that promised to engulf us all, but I held on fiercely, grasping for an understanding that felt like a flickering candle in the dark, a fragile hope in a world consumed by war. The storm was far from over, but perhaps, just perhaps, it was leading us somewhere we had never dared to dream. The air hangs heavy, thick with the tension of 1,000 whispered fears. They gather in the city square, shadows flitting between the flickering torches like restless spirits. I can feel the pulse of Athens, a city alive with uncertainty, every heartbeat echoing through the anxious crowd. The stones beneath my feet are warm, but dread chills my spine. I remember when the sun shone brighter, illuminating the ideals of democracy that once sparkled like jewels upon the crown of this city. Now, darkness nests within those ideals, a predator waiting to strike. In the center stands Callista, her fists clenched tight, knuckles white against the encroaching chaos. She is the embodiment of defiance, her heart racing with the relentless rhythm of courage. Yet fear lurks behind her fierce gaze, it fights to break free, clawing at her resolve. the voice of the people, the same voices that once sang praises of liberty, now rise in a clamor, a cacophony of anger and despair, demanding justice for a friend wrongfully accused, a spirit crushed under the weight of tyranny. I can see it in her eyes, the flicker of hope battling against the looming shadows. "Dare they silence us?" she cries, her voice a sharp edge that cuts through the murmur. "Dare they take our voices as they take our brother?" The crowd swells, a tidal wave of rage and sorrow, and I feel every pulse, every heartbeat, as if they are my own. Then there's Eden, standing at the frayed edges of the crowd, his brow furrowed with doubt. He once wore his ideals like a knight's armor, but now that armor is rusted, barely holding together under the weight of his shattered faith. He remembers the whispers of the oracle, the prophecies that promised a glorious fate for Athens, but the future feels grim, a horizon choked with smoke and uncertainty. The ghosts of lost dreams haunt him, their whispers echoing in the corners of his mind, taunting him with what could have been. "Callista, please," he murmurs, words barely escaping his lips, trembling like the leaves of an ancient olive tree. "You can't fight them alone. They will crush you." He wants to reach out, to pull her back from the brink, but the fear in his heart holds him captive, and all he can do is watch as she steps further into the storm. And then the moment arrives, sharp and brutal. The watchman, clad in armor that glimmers like the teeth of a hungry beast, push through the crowd, faces set like stone. I can feel the air shift, filled with a dread that clings to my skin. Eden's breath catches in his throat as he sees them approach, a grim herald of the violence to come. Callista stands firm, defiant, a lone flame flickering in a tempest. "Come to silence us? Come, do your worst." Her voice, a battle cry, igniting the spirits around her. The watchman, eyes cold, advance like an unstoppable tide, but within Callista burns a fire that refuses to be quenched. "I remember the stories my grandmother told me," she cries, her voice piercing the air, of heroes who fought against the darkness. "I will not falter." Her words resonate, a haunting melody that draws the crowd together, stitching hearts into a tapestry of shared defiance. Eden feels the weight of her challenge, and in that moment, he is thrust back into the past, memories of laughter, of spirited debates under the stars, of a time when freedom felt like a tangible gift. But the gift is now tainted, the nightmarish reality creeping closer. What if we are wrong? The thought gnaws at him, a relentless specter of doubt. What if our fight is in vain? Stop! A voice, a shout, a roar, comes from within the watchman, a grotesque reminder that authority can twist even the noblest hearts. The leader steps forward, his gaze piercing and merciless. "You threaten the peace of Athens. Stand down or face the consequences." The command rings out, a sword drawn in the arena of democracy, and the pulse of the crowd falters, uncertainty rippling through them. Callista's heart races. "Peace," she challenges, words like daggers. Is it peace to silence those who speak the truth? Is it peace to let fear dictate our actions? The crowd swells again, a dark wave of intensity rising to meet the threat. The air crackles with potential violence, an electric tension that dances on the edges of reason. But Eden watches, frozen, caught between two worlds, the weight of his fear and the pull of his loyalty to Callista. He remembers the children's laughter echoing through the streets, the dreams shared beneath the starlit nights, and now, all he feels is the gnawing ache of what he stands to lose. "What if I can't protect you?" The thought crushes him, a stone lodged in his throat. As the watchmen close in, hearts beat faster, breaths come shallow. The confrontation feels inevitable, the air thick with the scent of violence. I can taste the bitter fear, the bitterness of betrayal, hanging like smoke in the air. And yet, within me, there's something else, a flicker of hope, a fragile thread woven through the chaos. It whispers, "Stand up. Stand together." In this dangerous age, where the ideals of democracy are but a fragile echo, I watch Callista face the abyss with a heart ablaze, and Eden, trembling yet resolute, grapples with his own demons. The moment hangs suspended, a breath caught in time, and I'm lost in the chaos of the storm. "Let them come!" Callista cries, her voice surging with the strength of 1,000 voices. "Let them come, for we are the heartbeat of this city." And with that, the cacophony erupts, a symphony of fear and defiance, and I know, deep down, that this fight is far from over. The night stretches onward, a tapestry of shadows and light, and as I stand in the eye of the storm, I realize that the only certainty is this: we are on the brink. The echoes of the past intertwine with the whispers of the future, and amidst the chaos, the struggle for a democracy that is alive, that breathes, begins anew. I remember the air thick with tension, like a storm brewing just on the horizon, waiting for that first crack of thunder to unleash its fury. The sun had long dipped below the Acropolis, casting jagged shadows that danced on the cobblestones, as if the very stones of Athens were whispering secrets too dangerous to speak aloud. A shout echoed through the narrow alleys, slicing through the silence, a voice trembling with desperation, a rallying cry to arms that sent chills racing down my spine. Traitors! They conspire against us! The words hung in the air, heavy and electric, igniting a fire in the hearts of the citizens who crowded the agora. I stood there, breathless, watching as my friends and neighbors, once mere faces in the crowd, transformed into warriors, their eyes alight with a fury that threatened to consume them. I felt the pulse of their fear, their anger, surging through me, binding us in that moment, yet tearing us apart. Meet Lysander, the politician with charm that could light the darkest of rooms, yet a heart riddled with treachery. He stood there, his cloak billowing like a flag in the wind, a smile painted on his lips even as shadows lurked behind his back. A snake in the grass, they called him, but I saw more than that. I saw a man torn between ambition and loyalty, the weight of his choices pressing down upon him like the very stones of the Parthenon. He cherished power like a lover, yet feared it like a ghost, creeping through the corridors of his mind, refusing to let him rest. And then there was Callista, fierce and unyielding, her spirit as wild as the winds that whipped across the Aegean. I remember her voice, sharp and clear, cutting through the chaos like a blade. We must rise against them, she urged the throng, eyes blazing, her words igniting a firestorm of hope and rebellion. But beneath that fierce exterior lay a heart bruised by betrayal. She had loved Lysander, once, her trust had crumbled like the ancient ruins of our city. Each beat of her heart echoed with the ache of longing and loss, a reminder of their fractured bond. The tension between them was palpable, a taut string ready to snap at the slightest touch. Panic gnawed at me, clenching my stomach, as I recalled the whispers of conspiracy, the plots that curled and twisted like smoke in the dark corners of the city. Shadows lurked in the corners of every alley, as if the very walls were eavesdropping on our secrets. The political elite, those marble-hearted figures, conspired in hushed tones, their ambitions weaving a tapestry of deceit that threatened to ensnare us all. The people's cries for justice echoed back to us like ghosts, a haunting reminder that our world was teetering on the edge of a precipice. Lysander! Callista's voice rang out, sharp as a dagger. You've sold your soul. You'll reap what you sow. The crowd erupted, a chorus of agreement rippling through the masses, yet I could see the flicker of doubt in Lysander's eyes, a flicker that spoke of his own torment. His facade cracked for just a moment, a fleeting glimpse of the man beneath the mask, terrified of the storm he had unleashed. I remember the night that changed everything. Under a cloak of darkness, Lysander met with his allies, the flickering torchlight casting grotesque shadows that warped their features. They spoke in low murmurs, their intentions cloaked in layers of deceit. But I was there, hidden behind the marble columns, unseen, unheard. The air was suffocating, thick with conspiratorial whispers. Power is a fickle mistress, one man said, his voice low and gravelly. She'll consume you whole if you let her. I shivered, a chill racing through me. What price would they pay for power? What would they sacrifice? The hours stretched into eternity as they plotted, and I felt the weight of their decisions pressing upon my chest, a heavy burden of impending doom. I wanted to shout, to scream for Callista, to warn her of the tempest brewing just beyond the horizon. But my voice was trapped within me, a prisoner of fear and uncertainty. The tension thickened, a palpable force that threatened to choke the breath from my lungs. Time slipped away, each second stretching, distorting, until it seemed the cosmos itself held its breath, waiting for the moment to explode. And then it happened. A loud crash shattered the night, a cacophony of chaos spilling into the streets as the guards descended upon us, their armor glinting ominously in the torchlight. I saw Callista, her face a mask of defiance, as she stood tall against the tide of uniformed men, her spirit unbroken even as fear clawed at her insides. "We will not be silenced," she screamed, her voice a clarion call that ignited a spark in the hearts of the crowd. But Lysander stood frozen, caught between the shards of loyalty and ambition. I saw the war raging within him, the conflict that echoed through every heartbeat. He loved Callista, yet the hunger for power clawed at his insides, whispering promises of greatness that entangled him in a web of betrayal. "Lysander!" Callista cried, her voice cracking as the guards advanced, their faces obscured in the shadows. "Choose! Choose now!" The decision hung in the air, a fragile thread that could snap at any moment. I felt the breath catch in my throat, the world narrowing to that single point in time. Would he embrace the darkness, sealing our fates in blood and betrayal? Or would he rise from the ashes of his choices, reclaiming a lost love in the desperate chaos of revolution? I remember the moment stretching, bending time into an impossible shape, the very fabric of our lives teetering on the edge. It was then, in the heart of that storm, that the ghosts of Athens whispered their final warnings, their voices mingling with the cries of the people, the echoes of ambition and love colliding in a symphony of chaos and despair. The shadows loomed larger, the cracks widening, and I felt the weight of their choices before I even knew how it would unfold. The future was a gaping maw, ready to swallow us whole. And all we could do was wait, breathless, heart racing, teetering on the brink of eternity. The chill of the evening air wraps around me like a shroud, whispering secrets of a world unraveling. I stand in the Forum, the heart of a republic that pulses with betrayal, ambition, and an insatiable hunger for power. Shadows stretch long under the flickering light of torches, casting grotesque shapes that dance upon the stones. I can hear the faint echo of footsteps, urgent, frantic, cutting through the silence like a knife. This is the moment. I remember Gaius, his face twisted in anguish, eyes wild with fear. He stands before the Senate, trembling not with age but with the weight of a choice that could shatter everything. Will he be the hero of the people, or will he plunge the dagger deeper into the heart of Rome, the city that birthed him? "They are coming for us," he shouts, desperation clawing at the edges of his voice. The shadows are no longer a refuge, they are our enemy. Marcus, his brother in arms, remains steadfast, a granite figure amid the storm. Yet even he feels the tremors beneath his feet, the shifting loyalties and whispered treachery that seep into the air like poison. "Calm yourself, Gaius," he replies, his voice steady, but I can sense the tremor beneath his bravado. "You speak as if the gods themselves conspire against us." Oh, but they do, I think, as if the very cosmos has turned its gaze upon this moment, waiting, watching with bated breath. I feel it, this pulsing tension that sits heavy in my chest. The Republic is a fragile thing, tethered to the ideals of freedom and shared power, yet teetering on the brink of ruin. The Senate, once a sanctum for reason, has become a theater for betrayal. I remember the whispers of discontent, the hushed conversations in dark alleys. A man can only stand so close to the flame before he himself ignites. In the distance, a horn blares, a sound that reverberates through the very marrow of my bones. It is a summons, a call to arms, a signal that the end may not be as far away as we hope. I watch Gaius's face pale, the blood draining like the sun slipping below the horizon. His dreams of glory, once lustrous and bright, now shimmer with the dull, cold light of fear. "What if we fail?" he murmurs, as though the mere act of saying it could somehow summon it into existence. "We will not fail," Marcus insists, yet his eyes betray him, flickering like a candle in the wind. "We are warriors of the Republic, we fight for her future." But in the depths of his heart, does he truly believe it? I see the conflict within him, the noble spirit battling against the crushing weight of impending doom. Night descends, cloaking the city in a veil of shadows and uncertainty. The stars, indifferent spectators, watch as the two men stand at the precipice of their destinies. I remember the stories, the great battles, the triumphs that built this civilization. Yet here they are, two brothers caught in the undertow of a tide greater than themselves, drowning in waves of ambition and despair. I grasp the cool stone of the Forum, feeling its history seep into my veins. Events unfold like a dark tapestry, threads woven with the emotions of those who walked before. I can almost see the ghosts of their choices swirling around us. The executioners, the senators, the lovers, and the dreamers, all tangled in this web of fate. Each heartbeat, each breath, is a reminder of the fragility of existence. Then, the storm breaks. A figure emerges from the shadows, cloaked in darkness, a spectre of betrayal. It is Lucius, a once loyal friend turned conspirator, a serpent among doves. The people need a leader, Gaius. They crave strength. Will you give it to them, or shall you watch them perish? His voice is smooth, enticing, a siren's call in a sea of chaos. I can feel the pulse of dread that courses through the crowd, tightening like a noose. Gaius's resolve falters, and in that moment, I see the flicker of 1,000 choices flash before him. I remember his dreams of glory, of a republic where citizens stand united, free from the chains of tyranny. But the weight of the crown feels heavier than he imagined. What must I do? He gasps, the question hanging in the air like a sword poised to fall. Embrace the darkness, Lucius whispers, and the crowd holds its breath, teetering on the edge of something monumental. Become what they fear, and they will follow you. I shudder at the thought. This is the moment when ideals clash with ambition, when the line between savior and tyrant blurs into oblivion. The tension crackles in the air, a palpable force. Marcus steps forward, a protector against the encroaching darkness. You cannot let him dictate your soul, Gaius. Remember the Republic. But even he knows, deep down, that the battlefield is shifting, and the bonds they once cherished now feel like chains. Suddenly, the moment fractures. A shout erupts from the crowd, a roar of confusion, a cry for blood. I can feel the heartbeat of the city, a furious drum echoing through the night. The citizens, ragged and restless, surge forward, desperate for a resolution. What do we want? They chant, their voices rising in unison, a chorus of chaos. Power. Strength. Leadership, they scream, and I watch as the line between freedom and tyranny blurs further, swallowing them whole. I remember the ghosts of the past, the echoes of a republic on the brink, and I feel the weight of their choices pressing down on my chest, suffocating. Gaius stands at the center, torn between the man he wishes to be and the monster he fears to become. I see the flicker of doubt, the glimmer of resolve. I will not betray the republic, he shouts, but even as the words leave his lips, the shadows claw at his heart. And so, the night stretches on, a canvas of turmoil and urgency, painted with the brushstrokes of ambition and despair. I feel the weight of history pressing against my shoulders, the breaths of those who came before echoing in my mind. Time feels elastic, and as the drama unfolds, I know this is just the beginning. The flames of conflict will rise, and the Republic will be forced to confront its destiny. In the shadows, the clock ticks forward, marking the slow, inevitable march toward the Empire. The choice hangs in the air, a spectre of what could be. I take a breath, feeling the tension coil like a spring, ready to snap. Time waits for no one, and in this crucible of fate, the future is a fragile thing, spinning wildly, waiting for the spark. Blooded sand clings to his sandals, each step a reminder of the screaming, the chaos, the wild surrender of a world gone mad. The air is thick with smoke, acrid and stinging, a bitter perfume that wraps around Marcus like a shroud. He stands, heart racing, eyes wide, the clang of metal ringing in his ears, a symphony of war. He remembers the moment, oh, how he remembers, when the sky cracked open and the earth swallowed reason whole. A flash of steel, a grimace, and then silence. It's a silence that wraps around you like a lover's grip, promising warmth even as it chills you to the bone. This is Rome, where once proud legions now turn on each other, once familiar faces twisted into grotesque masks of wrath and desperation. Betrayal is rampant, the streets are soaked with blood, and Marcus feels the weight of the city's ghosts pressing down, their whispers scratching at the edges of his sanity. Lucius, he shouts, the name tearing from his throat like a wounded animal. The boy, barely a man, barely anything, is swallowed by the crowd. Marcus's heart lurches, visions of the boy's laughter puncturing the gloom, like sunlight through storm clouds. But now, Lucius is lost in the fray, a child adrift in a sea of madness. And there's Claudia, fierce and unyielding, standing in the shadows, her eyes alight with a fire that could ignite the stars. She is everything to him, her laughter like music, her anger a tempest. Yet here she is, caught between love and duty, as the very ground beneath their feet quakes with the weight of their choices. "You left me," she had said, tears streaking her dirt-stained face. "You left us." He remembers how she wielded her words like swords, sharp and deadly. Now, as the city crumbles, she stands resolute, eyes fixed on the horizon, where the sun bleeds into the sky, a dying ember of hope. But hope is a fragile thing in such times. It shatters easily, like glass underfoot. Marcus feels the tremors of the earth beneath him, a heartbeat that quickens, a signal, an omen. He remembers the stories of old, the ones that warned about the rise and fall of empires, the specters of history echoing in his mind. The Ides of March, they called it. The betrayal of a friend, the fall of a leader. It was supposed to be a cautionary tale, but here they are, living it, living the violence, the raw chaos of civil war as it tears through the heart of Rome. And then, the clash of swords, the yells of men, the screams of the dying. In that moment, time slows. Marcus watches as a soldier falls to the ground, eyes wide in shock, hands reaching out, not for help, but for the comfort of a world that doesn't exist anymore. "I remember," he whispers to himself, "when we were children, playing in the fields, dreaming of glory. But glory is a cruel mistress, and it leaves scars deeper than the wounds of war." "Claudia," he cries again, desperation clawing at him. She is the anchor in this storm, the last flicker of light in a darkened world. But she has her own demons, shadows that dance behind her eyes. He sees them now, flickering like candle flames. "This is our chance," she tells him, voice fierce. "We can fight. We can change this." But change comes at a price, and the cost is steep. In the midst of the turmoil, Marcus finds himself facing Lucius, the boy now a man, his face lined with the remnants of innocence lost. "You don't understand," Lucius breathes, fear and determination mingling in his gaze. "They've taken everything. We have to fight back." The fire in his eyes mirrors Claudia's, and for a moment, hope flares anew. But then reality settles in, heavy and oppressive. "I remember," Marcus murmurs, a chant of longing, of loss. "I remember when we laughed. When we thought the world was ours." But the laughter is drowned out by the roar of conflict, the cries of the fallen, the echoes of dreams crushed under the boot of ambition. The sky darkens, and shadows stretch long across the battlefield, like ghosts reaching for the living. Marcus grips his sword, knuckles white, a fragile line drawn between loyalty and justice, between love and vengeance. Claudia stands beside him, fierce as a lioness, unyielding, while Lucius hurls himself into the fray, a whirlwind of youthful fervor. But can love survive the storm? Can hope endure when all seems lost? The ground shakes, and for a heartbeat, time suspends. Marcus sees faces, friends, enemies, memories blurring into a horrific tapestry of what was and what could have been. There's a haunting beauty in the chaos, a macabre dance of fate and folly that he can't look away from. "Lucius," he cries, but the boy is gone, swallowed by the tide of violence. Claudia's hand grips his, fierce and burning. "Stay with me." He can feel the world unraveling, thread by thread, and he searches her gaze for solace, for a flicker of the past, the warmth of their shared laughter, the hope of a future unmarred by bloodshed. But all he finds is the abyss, a chasm of despair yawning wide between them. "Together," he whispers, but it feels like a promise laced with poison. The words hang in the air, heavy with nostalgia, yet the truth gnaws at him. This isn't a fairy tale, it's a nightmare wreathed in the crimson of betrayal. And as the battle rages on, Marcus stands at the precipice, torn between the ghosts of his past and the specters of his present. The clash of steel, the cries of the wounded, the echoes of a civilization tearing itself apart, they pulse through him, a visceral symphony of despair. "I remember," he murmurs, "when we believed we could change the world." But belief is a fragile thing, and the winds of fate howl louder than any dream. The sun sinks lower, casting a haunting glow upon the chaos, a cruel reminder of the lives lost, of the love that once was. As shadows stretch and intertwine, Marcus feels the weight of Rome's history pressing down upon him, a relentless tide of violence, betrayal, and longing. "Fight!" Claudia screams, her voice cutting through the mist, a rallying cry for the lost. And in that one word, he finds himself pulled deeper into the maelstrom, a tapestry woven with threads of grief, hope, and the unyielding desire to reclaim a world that may never return. In this moment, in this city steeped in blood, everything hangs in the balance. The dreams of a people, the cries for justice, the raw, pulsing heart of a civilization on the brink. Marcus knows that the story doesn't end here. It ripples out, reaching far beyond, into the endless night that awaits. A distant siren wails, echoing through the cobbled streets of Jerusalem as dusk descends, a haunting lament entwined with the scent of incense and the weight of history. The sun bleeds into the horizon, a violent orange bleeding into violet, as if the sky itself is weeping. In this city, where every stone has a voice, the air crackles with an urgent tension, a premonition that something is about to shatter the fragile stillness. I remember the first time I stood before the Western Wall, a relentless tide of humanity pouring past me, faces etched with prayers, hopes, and despair. I was but a shadow then, blending into the crowd, eyes wide with the enormity of faith hanging heavy in the air. But belief has a way of twisting the heart, doesn't it? Next to me, Miriam, her headscarf a brilliant sapphire against the muted tones of the stones, clutches a crumpled note, a plea to God or perhaps a desperate whisper of a dream long forsaken. Her fingers tremble, tracing the ancient wall, as if hoping to carve her sorrow into its very essence. Each touch, a silent prayer, a heartbeat in sync with the city that has witnessed centuries of love and bloodshed. She glances at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. What if he doesn't hear me? The question hangs heavy in the air. 1,000 voices shout around us, yet somehow, in this moment, we are alone, caught in an emotional vortex. I can't answer her. I want to. I want to tell her that the divine listens, that faith can fill the cracks in the soul. But I am suffocating under the weight of my own disbelief. I remember when faith felt tangible, like the warmth of sunlight on my skin. Now, it is a ghost, slipping through my fingers, leaving me with shadows, with echoes. And then there's David, always David, with his wild hair and eyes burning with a fierce intensity that could ignite 1,000 battles. He stands a few paces away, his voice a low growl as he argues with a vendor over the price of olives. But it's not just olives, it's everything that's at stake. Every word he barks carries the weight of a history in conflict, a boyhood spent dodging stones and bullets, a life threaded with the screams of the past. His heart, a battlefield of its own, wrestling with the ghosts of hatred and the flickering embers of love. David glances at us, his gaze piercing, and I know he feels the tension crackling like static electricity, the unsaid words hanging in the air thicker than the smoke rising from the incense. Do you feel it? He demands, his voice a fierce whisper. This city is alive. It breathes history, it suffocates us with it. I shudder as if struck, because he's right. Jerusalem is a living, breathing entity, a haunting melody that lures you into its embrace, only to stab you with its brutal truths. The war of the stones, the battles that rage within the heart of every man, every woman who walks its streets, shaped by the weight of faith and a relentless yearning for something more, peace, love, understanding. A sudden explosion of sound shatters the moment, gunfire, distant yet close enough to send a jolt through our spines. The city shifts. Bodies scatter. Panic surges like a tide, pulling us into its chaotic embrace. I see Miriam drop her prayer, the crumpled note fluttering away, a dove released into the darkening sky. She faces me, eyes wide, heart racing, every breath a prayer, every heartbeat a scream. What do we do? The question echoes in my mind, reverberating through the chaos. I am frozen, caught in a web of uncertainty. But David, his instinct kicks in. He reaches for my hand, a fierce grip anchoring me as we weave through the throngs of terrified souls. Keep moving, he urges, urgency thrumming through his veins. The weight of fear clings to us like a shroud. The air is thick with a palpable sense of loss, of lives unlived, dreams unfulfilled. I remember my grandmother's stories, the ones whispered in the quiet of night, tales of resilience, of love forged in the fires of conflict. But here, amidst the terror, I question if those stories hold any truth. Every corner of this city tells a story, but right now, it is a cacophony of heartache. The stones beneath my feet feel alive, pulsating with the memories of those who walked before us. A child cries somewhere in the distance, a sound that cuts deeper than the gunfire. I can feel it, a tiny heart grappling with the weight of fear, with the ghosts of a war it cannot understand. Miriam's voice trembles. We can't just run. We have to stand for something. But what is there to stand for when the ground beneath you shifts with every heartbeat, when love and hate are woven into the very fabric of existence? David pulls her close, desperation flaring in his eyes. And what will that get us? A martyr's grave. The words hang between us, heavy, loaded with the agony of conflicting desires, to fight, to love, to believe, to survive. And in the midst of it all, I feel a strange kinship with the city, its scars, its beauty, its relentless hope. I remember the times I felt alive, the moments that felt infinite, where faith transformed into something tangible, beautiful. Now, in this chaos, I cling to those memories like lifelines, but they slip through my fingers like sand. The streets pulse with fear, yet beneath it, beneath the chaos, is a deeper current of resilience. Every scream, every cry, is a heartbeat in this city, the echoes of faith, conflict, love, and uncertainty. I remember the stars above, the vast cosmos, indifferent yet somehow intertwined with the struggles of a city that refuses to bow. The night wraps around us, a cloak of shadows, and in this fleeting moment, I see Miriam, David, and the countless souls who call this city home. We are caught in a maelstrom, but together, we stand, still, frantic, alive. The air was thick, almost suffocating, a palpable silence that hung like a noose around the necks of those gathered in the shadow of the temple. I could feel it. The tension, like a coiled serpent poised to strike. A distant shout shattered the hush, a voice filled with outrage, echoing off the ancient stones, resonating deep within my bones. Blasphemer, they cried, a word heavy with venom, curling around the crowd like smoke. My heart raced, the rhythm quickening as if it, too, could sense the coming storm. I remember the faces, their eyes wide with fear, anger, hatred, desperation. A man named Zechariah stood at the forefront, shaking his fist toward the heavens as if demanding justice from the very sky. His features were sharp, worn by the weight of his convictions, a passion that burned so fiercely it seemed to cast shadows across the very ground he stood upon. And yet, beneath that fiery exterior lay a vulnerability, a longing for peace that felt impossibly distant in this suffocating chaos. Why must the Romans dictate our faith? He shouted, his voice cracking, raw with emotion. The crowd swelled around him, a living wave of fervor and frustration, and I felt every heartbeat, every pulse, a collective echo reverberating through the streets. A woman named Miriam stood nearby, her body trembling as she clutched her child, a tiny figure swaddled in rags, oblivious to the tumult. Her eyes mirrored the turmoil in Zechariah's heart, fear and determination swirling like storm clouds, threatening to burst. We cannot let them take our beliefs, she cried, yet her voice was barely a whisper against the roar of the throng. I remember, oh, how I remember, watching as the cracks in their fragile facade began to widen. They were all trapped in a game far more significant than they could comprehend, pieces on a board that stretched across centuries, painted in blood and sacrifice. I could feel the weight of their history pressing in, a ghostly hand gripping my throat as I envisioned the prophets and kings, the betrayals and promises that hung in the air like the scent of incense, sweet yet bitter. Zechariah! Miriam! A voice pierced through the clamor. A man named Eli, a friend and a broker of secrets, stepped forward. His eyes darted nervously, haunted by a past that clung to him like a shadow. We must not provoke them. The Romans are swift and merciless. He was pleading, but desperation had a way of turning words into daggers. I could feel the crowd's pulse quicken, a collective intake of breath, the kind that precedes a fall, a plunge into darkness. But Zechariah would not be swayed. What good is life without faith? He shouted, his voice rising, igniting the fury of the crowd. Every syllable was a match thrown onto a powder keg. What will we tell our children if we bow to tyranny? The question hung there, heavy and poignant, a thin veil over the raw emotion rippling through the crowd. Miriam looked between the two men, her heart torn. She remembered the stories, her mother's whispers of the glory days, of a Jerusalem free and proud, where faith and spirit thrived without shackles. But those memories felt like ghosts now, lost in the fog of oppression. Her child's tiny fingers clutched at her cloak, grounding her in that moment, yet also tearing her apart. "But what if they come for us?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Fear laced her words, an unraveling thread that threatened to pull her into a chasm of despair. And then it happened. The ground beneath us trembled as soldiers marched in, their armor glinting in the fading light, a reminder of the iron grip of power. They were like a plague, a dark tide sweeping across the land, suppressing the flickering flames of hope. The crowd's energy shifted, morphing from fervor to raw, palpable fear. The soldiers advanced, shields raised, faces obscured beneath metal visors, a wall of intimidation that felt insurmountable. "Stand firm!" Zechariah shouted, though his voice trembled. "We are the children of the promise." But even as the words left his lips, I could feel the doubt seep into his resolve, like a slow poison. Miriam squeezed her child tighter, her heart racing with a primal instinct to protect, to shield. I could feel her pulse, quickening alongside the drumbeats of impending chaos. Eli took a step back, retreating into the shadows, his resolve crumbling like ancient stones underfoot. What is faith against swords and spears? Nothing. He was lost now, a ghost of his former self, fading into the background, just as the echoes of past victories faded into the whispers of time. "Together?" Zechariah roared, rallying the few who remained steadfast. And there was a flicker of something, an ember of hope, perhaps. But as I stood among them, I felt that ember smothered by the weight of despair, and the truth struck me: in the heart of Jerusalem, faith could easily become a weapon, and hope a double-edged sword. But the confrontation was inevitable. It loomed like a gathering storm cloud, dark and ominous. I could feel the air crackle with anticipation as tension mounted, spiraling toward that fateful moment when faith and fear would collide. Shadows lengthened, and the night grew heavy with promises and threats, an abyss that whispered of betrayal and sacrifice. A horn blared, a sound that cut through the air like a knife, piercing the fabric of their resolve. And in that fleeting instant, I saw it, the flicker of doubt in Zechariah's eyes, the resolve crumbling in Miriam's heart, the desperate yearning for peace amidst the chaos. It was a fleeting moment, yet it felt like eternity, a reflection of all that was to come, a prelude to the storm. As the crowd surged forward, driven by passion and fear, I knew this was just the beginning. The storm was gathering, and with it, the weight of centuries of belief, strife, and yearning. It felt as if all of Jerusalem held its breath, teetering on the edge of chaos, waiting for the moment when the dam would break and the flood of history would swallow them whole. And in that gathering dark, amid the din of shouts and the clash of swords, I felt the universe pulse with a cosmic heartbeat, timeless and unyielding, a reminder that the struggle for faith and freedom would echo through the ages, a loop that would never truly end. The sun hung like a severed head over Alexandria, casting a bloody glow across the cobbled streets. I remember the blood, the way it clung to the ground, thick and dark, swirling like ink beneath my bare feet. A body lay crumpled, unnaturally twisted, and in that moment, the world fell silent. Not a whisper, not a breath. Just the sound of hearts pounding, my own a frantic drum, feeling the pulse of this cursed city. Alexandria! The Hellenistic hub of violence, where shadows danced and nightmares were born. I caught sight of Lysandra, her eyes wide, the vibrant blue piercing through the dust and chaos that cloaked us. She was the embodiment of fear, yet she stood tall, radiating a strength that belied the trembling in her hands. "We have to go," she said, urgency vibrating in her voice, but I was rooted, frozen in the moment. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on us, choking the air, each breath heavy with unspoken stories, desperate cries echoed in the alleyways. And then there was Marcus, the foolhardy dreamer whose dreams had turned into nightmares under the weight of his ambition. He was a wild card, and right then, as he stepped over the body, his face was a mask of desperation and defiance. "No," he shouted, eyes blazing. "This is our moment. We can change it. We can take it back." His voice rang out, bold and unyielding, but it rang hollow against the backdrop of the city's anguish. I felt the irony weave through my veins. How many times had I heard that very line? Change it, take it back. But change, like the decaying bodies littering the streets, was an illusion here. Lysandra tugged at my sleeve, her grip vice-like, dragging me back into the chaos. "You can't save them," she whispered, her voice breaking. I remembered her laughter, the way it used to ring like music in the air, the joy we shared under the stars, dreams woven into the fabric of our youth. Now, we were caught in a storm of bloodshed, dreams splintered like glass. The air grew heavy with the scent of smoke, mingling with an acrid tang that burned the throat. The fires were everywhere, symbolic of destruction, rebellion, and yet, oddly, of life. The flames flickered like ghosts, taunting us, urging us forward into the embrace of the inferno. My heart raced, memories of laughter turning to cries of anguish as I thought of our friends, lost in the turmoil, faces fading like shadows at dusk. A sudden explosion rocked the ground beneath us, a cacophony that ripped through the silence, sending shards of fear slicing into my chest. I stumbled, but Marcus surged ahead, fueled by a reckless abandon, screaming for justice, for vengeance. "They will pay. They will pay for this." The intensity in his voice was chilling, it echoed through the ruins of our hopes. But I saw it in his eyes, he was fighting against the very fabric of reality, a tragic hero in a play that had long before written its final act. I wanted to scream, to pull him back from the precipice, but the words died in my throat, swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Lysandra clung to me, her breath quickening, a fragile bird in a storm. "What if it's already too late?" she murmured, fear licking at her words like flames licking the edges of parchment. I wanted to tell her it was never too late, but the truth was more complex than the beauty of youth. Alexandria had a way of twisting love into hurt, hope into despair. Its streets were alive with the echoes of the past. Each turn we took felt like walking through a gallery of horrors, the ghosts of those who had come before us, each one a reminder of our impending doom. I remember the clock tower that loomed above us, its hands stubbornly ticking, each second a reminder of time slipping away, taunting us with the inevitability of fate. It felt like the heartbeat of the city, a pulse that quickened with every act of violence, every scream that shattered the night. I could see it now, the distant glow of torches, the silhouettes of men, shadows of anger and desperation, gathering in the streets. "Stay close," I whispered, but I knew the words were futile. In Alexandria, the safety of proximity was an illusion, a cruel joke played by fate. As we moved through the chaos, I could feel the tension stretch impossibly thin. My heart raced, an electric pulse buzzing beneath my skin, every instinct screaming at me to flee, to escape the hell that had enveloped us. But how could we leave? How could we abandon the very essence of our existence, the city that had birthed our dreams? A shout broke through the clamor, a name, Marcus's name, lost in the din. It was a call echoing from somewhere deep within, a siren song of madness and chaos. I turned to Lysandra, her face etched with a blend of terror and resolve, and all at once, I felt the weight of our choices crashing down. We had become entangled in a web of violence, spinning wildly, unable to discern the truth from the lies. I could hear the crashing of waves against the harbor, a metaphorical heartbeat of Alexandria, reminding me of the constant ebb and flow of life and death. Time was not our ally. It never had been. I remembered the warmth of laughter once shared between us, the dreams we had dared to chase, slipping away like grains of sand through our fingers. But now, in this moment of reckoning, as the city writhed in agony, we stood on the brink of something unfathomable. Choices lay before us, paths lined with darkness and despair, yet the flicker of hope remained, fragile as a candle's flame. And in that uncertainty, the world felt vast, like a cosmic dance, as we spiraled deeper and deeper into the heart of Alexandria, the city we loved, the city that devoured our souls. Then, a scream pierced the air, raw and unfiltered, tearing through the tension like a knife through flesh. It was then that I understood, this was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for our very essence, a battle against the tide of despair that threatened to consume us whole. As we faced the impending storm, I knew one thing for certain: in Alexandria, amidst the chaos and carnage, it was not just a city that bled, it was our very souls, tangled together in the relentless pursuit of life, love, and the haunting shadows that would never let us go. The clash came like thunder rolling in from a clear sky. I stood on the threshold of chaos, breath caught in my throat, watching as the night turned into a grotesque tapestry of fire and fury. Voices screamed, a cacophony of tongues, each one a dagger aimed at the heart of this ancient city, where the mingling of cultures was once a beautiful dance. Now? Now it was a brawl for survival, a frenzied clash where every heartbeat pulsed with fear and anger. I remember the first flickers of flame, illuminating faces twisted in rage. There was Tariq, his dark eyes wide, a blend of disbelief and fury, clutching a wooden staff as if it alone could shield him from the chaos spilling like ink over parchment. He had believed in unity, a dream that now lay shattered on the cobblestones, splintered like the bones of the city's once proud architecture. His father, a merchant who traded spices and silks, had taught him that the heart of this place thrived on differences, but tonight, those differences were tearing it apart. And then there was Lyra, her long hair whipping like a banner in the air, an ethereal spirit woven into the fabric of the night. She was a scholar, a woman who found solace in books while the world outside twisted into grotesque shapes of violence. Yet here she was, swept into the melee, her voice rising above the tumult, pleading for calm. The irony pierced deeper than the stones thrown from angry hands. She had dreamed of a world where knowledge bridged gaps, but now her dreams felt like whispers lost in the storm. "Stop! Stop!" she cried, her voice cracking like glass. Each plea fell like a feather onto the tempest, nearly drowned out by the roar of the mob. I watched her, heart thrumming with both admiration and despair, and I wondered how she could still hope as flames licked at the edges of her dreams. The air thickened, a suffocating mixture of smoke and sweat, heightened by the cries of the wounded. A man fell, a stranger, faceless in the frenzy, grasping at the air as if it could lift him away from the chaos. I remember the moment he fell, the way time seemed to stretch, a silent scream echoing in my mind. Tariq's hand trembled near his staff, caught between the instinct to help and the instinct to survive. What good would it do to rescue a dying man when his own life teetered on the brink? "Think!" I wanted to shout at him, but words tangled in my throat. The swirl of emotions twisted tighter until it felt like a noose. Each face I saw was a reflection of my own fears, a mirror to the chaos within, but I was also encased in a shell of indecision. I had studied this city's stories, the ebb and flow of its cultures like the tides, yet history was now a spectre haunting us all. The laughter that once filled the streets had turned into a symphony of suffering. To think we bathed once a year, I muttered to myself, the absurdity creeping in like a thief in the night. Romance was earthy. The grim humor bubbled up, a deflection from the horror, a reminder of how we once lived. Yet here I was, caught in a moment of visceral, spine-chilling reality. The ghosts of my own snarky observations faded as I witnessed the world unravel before my eyes. "Lyra!" Tariq shouted, his voice breaking through the cacophony. He rushed forward, drawn by the gravity of her spirit, but she faltered under the weight of her own desperate idealism. "What if they don't listen?" Her eyes glimmered with unshed tears, fear seeping into the edges of her resolve. The very ground trembled beneath the weight of their hopes, a fragile thing threatened by the sheer force of humanity's darker instincts. Together, they stumbled through the throngs, two souls caught in a whirlwind of despair and anger. I could feel their struggle, a tangible thread connecting them, even as the city threatened to unravel around us. Each step echoed with the heartbeat of a city on the edge. The cries of the mob surged and receded, like waves crashing against a stubborn shore, but beneath it all, a more insidious current flowed, fear, resentment, and the guarded belief that we could never truly belong to each other. Somewhere, a bell tolled, its mournful chime a reminder of what was at stake. Time fractured, slipping away from us while the stars glittered coldly above, indifferent to our plight. In that instant, it was as if the cosmos itself held its breath, waiting for something to break, to snap like the bow of a tightly wound string. With every clash of wood against stone, the symphony of destruction played on, and I found myself mesmerized, caught in the dance of chaos. I saw how the shadows lengthened, swallowing the light, how they crept toward the heart of everything we had built together. And in that moment of dark clarity, I understood, there would be no simple resolution. This was not a tale of heroes and villains, but of flawed beings caught in a tempest of their own making. They were children of the same city, yet enemies in a night painted with shades of fury and passion. I remember the unyielding weight of that realization, how it struck through the din like a dagger, making me question everything I had known about love, about connection. As the night wore on, it became clear that the battle was not just for survival, but for the very soul of the city, the dreams woven into the fabric of its existence. With every clash, we were reminded of what it meant to be human, the capacity to love, to hate, to cling desperately to the fragments of understanding in a world spinning hopelessly out of control. I stood there, a silent witness, heart racing, mind reeling, and I knew this was only the beginning. The shadows encroached, the fires burned brighter, and the city's heartbeat quickened, pulling us toward an uncertain future. Would we sink into despair, or rise from the ashes, forged anew? The answer hung like smoke in the air, tantalizing and terrifying, a whisper of possibility amid the chaos. And as the night deepened, I realized it was not the end we had to fear, but the infinite ways we might find to begin again. The air hangs thick, heavy with smoke and the metallic scent of impending doom. The clang of swords rings out like a funeral dirge, an echo reverberating through the narrow streets of Constantinople. I stand on the cusp of chaos, heart racing, hands trembling, the weight of history pressing against my chest like a vice. I remember the whispers of my ancestors, a choir of ghosts lingering in the shadowed corners of this city, their hopes, their fears, all entwined in the stone and mortar that rises around me. In the distance, a fire blazes, licking at the night sky, devouring everything in its path. My breath hitches. They say the flames can purify, but I know better. I've seen what they consume: dreams, lives, love. Nothing sacred is spared. I remember the night my brother, Arius, stood by my side, his laughter ringing like a precious bell. He spoke of dreams, of conquering the world, of love that transcended borders. But dreams have a way of turning on you, like a dagger in the dark. Beside me stands Eleni, her eyes a tempest of despair and determination. She clutches a small, tattered locket, the last remnant of a life that feels like a distant ghost. Her fingers tremble, tighter than the bonds of her aching heart. If we don't move now, we'll be swallowed whole, she breathes, her voice a fragile thread of steel. I see her pain, the way it carves lines into her youthful face, how it twists her spirit like a vine choking a tree. Yet, there's a fire within her, fierce and unyielding, a flicker that could ignite the entire city. Eleni, we can't run forever, I say, my voice a whisper as I feel the ground shift beneath us, the tremor of an approaching storm. The shadows pulse like a living thing, a reminder of all that is at stake. She looks at me, and in that moment, the world around us fades. There's no battlefield, no looming danger, just us, tangled in an impossible web of dreams and regrets. They bathe once a year, you know, I joke, trying to lighten the suffocating weight of the moment. So romance was earthy. It's a desperate attempt to pierce the shroud of dread that envelops us, a macabre humor that feels absurdly out of place but spills from my lips nonetheless. She cracks a smile, and it's like the dawn breaking through a stormy night. You're insufferable, she replies, a soft laugh breaking the tension, but her eyes betray her. The laughter is a mask, a fragile facade against the reality looming at the edges of our little sanctuary. Arius is gone now. I remember the way he fell, how the light faded from his eyes amidst the chaos, leaving only shadows behind. I hadn't been able to save him. The memory slices through me, a fresh wound, and I feel the sharp pang of guilt rise in my throat. Each heartbeat echoes his absence, a relentless reminder of the cost of dreams. Do you think about him? Eleni asks, her voice trembling as if she can feel the weight of my grief. Every day, I admit, the truth spilling from me like a dark river. Every moment. I don't need to explain, she understands the gravity of loss, the haunting spectre that lingers in the corners of our minds. Time shifts around us, a cruel trickster. The city's heart beats on, a rhythm of fear and fury, of hope and despair. The sound of approaching footsteps snaps me back to reality, and my breath quickens. We must go, I urge, urgency clawing at my throat. We slip into the shadows, ghosts among ghosts, darting past the crumbling facades that tell 1,000 stories of triumph and tragedy. The world outside is a cacophony of shouts and the clash of steel. The air is thick with the acrid smell of smoke and sweat, the cries of the wounded ringing out like a symphony of despair. I feel the pulse of the city, its heart thrumming beneath my feet, a desperate plea for salvation. It's a city steeped in history, where empires rise and fall, where hope flickers like a candle in the dark. We find ourselves in a narrow alley, the walls closing in like the pages of a story waiting to be told. I glance at Eleni, her eyes are wide, reflecting the chaos beyond. "We can't go back," she whispers, and I know she feels it too, the weight of the world pressing down on us, the inevitability of fate pulling us toward an uncertain end. "Then we forge ahead," I say, summoning a strength I didn't know I had. "For Arius." The name hangs in the air, a sacred vow echoing through the shadows. We take a breath, a shared moment of resolve, and step into the fray. The world explodes around us. Swords clash, men shout, and the ground shakes under the weight of despair. Each swing, each blow, echoes the heartbeat of a city caught in the throes of change. I feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, a wild rush that intertwines with fear. Eleni fights beside me, her spirit a fierce blaze against the encroaching darkness. Together, we carve a path through the chaos, an unbreakable bond forged in the crucible of battle. But I see the shadows creeping closer, the ghosts of the past whispering in our ears, warning us of the price we must pay. And then, amidst the fury, a figure appears, cloaked in shadows, a spectre of our fate. I can't see his face, but the aura of dread radiates from him like a black hole, threatening to consume everything in its path. My heart stutters, an echo of fear reverberating through the very fabric of my being. "It's time," he whispers, and in those two words, I feel the weight of history, the burden of destiny. The line between past and future blurs, a tapestry woven with threads of pain and sacrifice. I feel Eleni's hand grip mine tighter, her heartbeat syncing with my own, a defiant rhythm against the orchestra of chaos. But what is time when faced with eternity? When dreams feel like shadows, and reality twists like smoke? I remember. I remember the laughter, the love, the heartbreak. I remember the promise of tomorrow, a flicker of hope amid the darkness. But in this moment, in this city, the gateway between east and west, between life and death, between dreams and despair, we stand together, ready to face whatever ghosts await us. And as the first light of dawn breaks over the horizon, we know the story is far from over. It's only just begun. The air crackled with tension, a thick mist swirling through the narrow streets of the city, reminiscent of ghosts whispering forgotten stories. It was dusk, the sun bleeding crimson as if mourning the lives lost in battles fought over this piece of earth, this jewel coveted by kings and commoners alike. I stood there, heart racing, watching as shadows flitted past, their faces distorted by fear and desperation. The echoes of 1,000 footsteps reverberated in the cobblestones, each beat a reminder of a city forever entangled in conflict. "Look at them," whispered Sophia, her voice low, almost lost in the cacophony. She had always been the brave one, yet there was a tremor in her words, a crack in her facade. "Do they even know what they're fighting for?" Her eyes, pools of uncertainty, searched mine, pleading for an answer neither of us had. I could hardly breathe. Memories crashed over me like waves, flashbacks of fiery sieges, of despair etched into the faces of those who once called this city home. The fires that consumed everything in their path roared like beasts, eager to devour the dreams of generations. I remembered the night the sky turned dark from smoke, the stars extinguished by the weight of sorrow. "They fight for power," I managed, my voice hoarse. But what is power without peace? The city, a fortress of ambition, lay sprawled before us, its walls heavy with history. I could almost hear the whispers of the past, the clang of swords, the cries of the wounded, reverberating through time. "But we're trapped in this cycle," I said, frustration bubbling to the surface. "We are prisoners of our own making." Sophia's gaze drifted, and I followed it, landing on a young soldier standing guard. His face, barely more than a boy's, was marred by a grim determination, eyes shadowed by the weight of loyalty, a burden he carried for those he loved. He clenched his fists, probably thinking of home, of laughter shared over meals that now felt like distant dreams. What haunted him? The ghosts of those who had fallen? The ghosts of his own unfulfilled dreams? I felt a pang for him, for us all. Time splintered as we stood, suspended in this moment, the clock tower tolling softly in the distance. Each chime echoed like a heartbeat, a reminder that time was running out. Conflict stretched before me like a tapestry woven from pain, a tapestry of unrelenting wars fought over this city's strategic importance. Control over trade routes, resources, power. The city was a chess piece, and like pawns, people were sacrificed, their lives reduced to mere numbers on a ledger. I remember the stories my grandmother told me, I whispered, the weight of memory pressing down. Of a time when laughter echoed in these streets, not the sounds of cannons. I could see it, the city alive with color, the markets bustling, children laughing, lovers stealing kisses under the moonlight. But each memory was a dagger to my heart, sharp and bitter. Now it's just a ghost town, filled with shadows. Sophia's gaze hardened, her resolve rising like a phoenix from the ashes. We can change this, she said, fists clenched, eyes blazing. We can break the cycle. The intensity in her voice sent shivers down my spine. I wanted to believe her, to grasp that fragile hope, but deep down, I sensed the futility. The city had a pulse, a twisted rhythm that thrived on chaos. It was as if the walls themselves absorbed the sorrow, every crack telling a story of loss. Just then, the distant roar of cannon fire shattered the silence, jolting us back to the present. The soldier's face paled, a flicker of fear crossing his features before he steeled himself, marching forward into the fray. "They're coming," he shouted, his voice rising above the din. My heart raced, a primal instinct ignited within me, raw and visceral. "Are we really going to stand here?" Sophia's voice trembled, a mixture of fear and adrenaline coursing through her. "We can't just let them fight for nothing." I glanced at her, torn between the instinct to flee and the urge to fight alongside her, to stand against the tide of despair. Our decision was made in a heartbeat, a silent agreement forged in the heat of urgency. Together, we raced into the chaos, the world around us blurring into a storm of desperation and fury. The air was thick with the scent of sweat, gunpowder, and something inexplicably sweet, like irony hanging heavy on the tongue. I could hear the screams, the clash of metal on metal, a symphony of agony and fear. In the midst of the chaos, our paths crossed with the young soldier once more. "You shouldn't be here," he shouted, but there was admiration in his eyes, a flicker of understanding. "This isn't your fight." "But it is." Sophia shot back, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife, fierce and unyielding. "Every fight is ours. Every life lost matters." The soldier hesitated, the weight of her words pulling at him, just as the weight of history pulled at us all. I felt the surge of something greater than fear, a collective heartbeat, thrumming through the chaos, binding us together in our shared humanity. This city, this battleground, was a mirror reflecting our souls, our struggles, our refusal to be mere shadows of despair. And just like that, the ground beneath us trembled, the universe holding its breath as the tides of conflict surged and receded, each wave a reminder that the city was alive, forever entwined with the stories of those who fought, loved, and lost. Yet in that moment, I realized the truth: history was not just a series of events. It was an unending cycle, a relentless loop of passion and pain, and forgetting was never an option. The clock chimed once more, its echo weaving through the fabric of our struggle, and I felt it, a haunting call to arms, a reminder that every heartbeat counted in the relentless march of time. I turned to Sophia, the fire in her eyes reflecting my own turmoil, and I knew. We were part of this story, an inseparable thread in the tapestry of a city that would never truly rest. We were the ghosts, the echoes of the past, and the promise of tomorrow, forever swirling in the haunting shadows of this beloved, cursed city.